Chapter 540. Woo woo, the flute sounded again. It floated in the night sky, but it was not as lonely as it was the first time. The melodious sound of the flute was intertwined with the music of the zither. The lingering sound of the wild and gentle accompaniment immediately enhanced the gentleness and heroism of the song. It vividly displayed the charm of laughing mountains and rivers, drifting in the misty rain. The night wind seemed to be stirred up as it blew towards them, fluttering their clothes and making the bonfire flicker. The music of the zither and the flute was perfect, and it was a rare song to be heard in the world. Yen Lan and the other girls' hair danced in the wind, but they still stared at Yu Qianqiu, as if the lingering sound of the flute was also produced by the strings of the zither under his fingers. They didn't think that it was someone else who was playing the flute, because the flute's insertion point was just right. Those who were immersed in it felt that the music was even more beautiful and emotional. However, Yu Qianqiu noticed it. He kept playing the zither with his fingers to cooperate with the people who were singing loudly. He turned his head and looked at the veiled girl who was playing the flute beside the pavilion. The night wind came at the right time, wrapping around the mysterious girl's graceful figure. The green veil covering her face was blown up. Although her face was not exposed, half of her smooth and round forehead was already revealed. Yu Qianqiu stared at her, but he didn't know that the eyes under the green veil were also looking at him. Fingers plucking the strings and lips playing the flute, they cooperated so well. It was as if they had a telepathic connection, and their hearts were connected to each other. Everything was understood without words. A few strands of affection were quietly brewing in their eyes. Fang Ming was probably the only one among the rogue cultivators who wasn't immersed in it. He was slightly absent-minded, but he immediately woke up when he heard the flute. Now that he saw that the mysterious girl was playing the flute together with Niu Yid, he would be lying if he said he wasn't jealous. But what could he do about it? He could only keep it in his heart. Fang Ming's eyes fell on the four people who were singing loudly. He was hesitant, but then a trace of determination flashed across his eyes. With light footsteps, he slowly retreated to the periphery. He did not dare to move too much, wanting to leave before the crowd came back to their senses. It wasn't that he didn't want to call his four brothers to go with him, but he was afraid that it would alarm the others. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to escape at all. This was because he had given up the last chance that Niu Yid had given him. It wasn't like he was the one who started the practice of the cultivation world, abandoning their peers to save their own lives. However, he had left a little too late. If he had left while Yu Qianqiu was still immersed in playing and singing, he might have really let him escape. But now that Yu Qianqiu was awake with his cultivation, how could Fang Ming escape from under his nose? Yu Qianqiu glanced out of the corner of his eyes and caught sight of Fang Ming gradually retreating. His eyes narrowed and a cold smile appeared on his lips. Although he had done a lot of despicable things, he had never done something like abandoning his brothers. Ha 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 ha. The sound of the zither rang out violently, startling the people who were singing loudly. They woke up with a start and looked at Yu Qianqiu. The gentle sound of the flute also stopped. Niu Yid stood up and threw the zither into his storage bag. He stared at a direction and said in a low voice, "Fang Ming, where do you think you're going?" Fang Ming stopped in his tracks and slowly turned around. He said nonchalantly, "Niu Yid, what do you mean by that? Do I have to tell you where I want to go? This is the ghost village, not your home. No matter how powerful you are, it's not up to you to make decisions here." Everyone's eyes focused on him. They were not idiots. Based on what had happened before, they naturally guessed that Fang Ming wanted to escape. His four brothers stared at him in silence. Their expressions were very complicated. "I don't make decisions about other things, and I'm too lazy to make decisions. But your life." Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and pointed at him. He said indifferently, "I gave you one last chance, but you didn't want it. The moment I played this song, your life no longer belonged to you." Fang Ming naturally wouldn't sit and wait for death. Even ants wanted to live, let alone humans. His chest heaved up and down as he said, "Niu Yid, who can prove that the song you're singing is definitely composed by Yu Qianqiu?" Everyone understood what he meant, but they could also tell that he was being shameless. At the very least, they all believed that the song was composed by Yu Qianqiu. "I've long guessed that you're not only a liar but also a scoundrel," Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly, "but I, Niu Yid, not only like to win people over with my virtue, I also like to be a ruthless judge. People like you deserve to die. I sentence you to death." "What do you want?" Fang Ming was shocked. He originally thought that Niu Yid would have some misgivings in the ghost manner, so he was prepared to use his mouth. But looking at Niu Yid's expression, it seemed like he wanted to use force. Thus, he moved towards the mountain-leaning pavilion and said, This is the ghost manor, it's not your turn to mess around. He looked at the one-armed old man for help. He also knew that Niu Yud's cultivation was higher than his, so he couldn't escape. He could only place his hope on the one-armed old man guarding the ghost manor. Umph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. His body moved with a whoosh. He slid across the short grass on the ground, bypassing the campfires in the crowd, and directly approached Fang Ming. Amidst the clamor of the crowd, Fang Ming turned pale with fright and released a flying sword. He jumped on it and flew towards the mountain-leaning pavilion. His only chance of survival was there, so where else could he run to? But how could his nascent soul stage's speed be faster than Yu Qianqiu's? In an instant, the sound of something breaking through the air was getting closer. Fang Ming was scared out of his wits as he cried out in fear, "Senior, save me! Senior, save me! Young lady, save me!" His cry stopped abruptly. Yu Qianqiu leaped into the air and slapped his palm behind him. Fang Ming's body emitted a cloud of white smoke, which was quickly absorbed into Yu Qianqiu's palm. Immediately after, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and unleashed a gust of astral wind. With a piu sound, Fang Ming instantly turned into dust. All the rogue cultivators were so shocked that they couldn't speak. They didn't even see what happened. Just 2 palms. 2 palms were enough to turn a nascent soul stage cultivator's bones into dust. Not even a piece of him could be seen. What kind of spell was this? It was too terrifying. Everyone didn't see it, but the veiled woman and the one-armed old man saw it clearly. Fang Ming was clearly turned into a dried-up skeleton by Niu Yud's palm, and then turned into dust by another palm. Absorbing Star's great technique. The veiled woman's delicate body slightly trembled. Her red lips under the azure veil murmured, "It really is him." If the first sentence was heard by Yu Qianqiu, he would definitely be very surprised. Although it wasn't the first time he used the Absorbing Star's great technique, the number of people who knew about it could be counted on one hand. At least no woman knew about it. After the one-armed old man clearly saw the power of this palm, his pupils rapidly shrank. There was no doubt in his eyes that he was shocked. After Fang Ming died, the flying sword under his feet still rushed towards the leaning mountain pavilion. The one-armed old man teleported in front of the veiled woman and conveniently grabbed the flying sword. Teleportation. Yu Qianqiu stared deeply at the one-armed old man. He had no intention of colliding with these 2 unknown people. His body turned in the air and immediately rushed towards Fang Ming's 4 brothers. After the 4 of them witnessed Fang Ming's tragic death, they were stunned. Suddenly, they realized that the person was rushing towards them. They were so scared that they immediately jumped up and ran. However, just as the 4 of them jumped up, they discovered that they were already surrounded by a qi dynamic. Yu Qianqiu flew backward in the air and slammed his palm toward the 4 people below. 4 streams of white smoke rushed into his palm with a whooshing sound. Since he had already made his move, he didn't mind carrying the crime of killing the innocent. He wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Everyone raised their heads and saw the 4 sounds of the palm. Suddenly they heard a rushing sound that pierced through the air. He turned around and saw that the one-armed old man in the leaning mountain pavilion had made a move. Fang Ming's flying sword left his hand, leaving behind a magnificent silver light. It was accompanied by the faint sound of wind and thunder as it shot toward Yu Qianqiu, who was in midair. A strong wind followed the flying sword, and wherever it went, the bonfire would be extinguished. The people below felt their faces hurt from the strong wind. From the looks of it, the 2 experts were about to fight. No one dared to sit still. It wouldn't be fun if they got caught in the crossfire. They scattered like birds and beasts. They didn't even have time to hide. Even if they wanted to watch the show, they had to stay far away. Yu Qianqiu had just finished off the 4 people with 1 palm strike when he saw the flying sword coming towards him. In an instant it was right in front of him. When the flying sword was still a few meters away, the strong wind had already hit him. He almost couldn't stand still in the air. He was shocked. This old man's cultivation was so high. Without another word, he leaped into the air again. Activating the metal art, he slapped the flying sword that had just brushed past him. Bang! The flying sword that was wrapped in the strong wind could no longer withstand the pressure. It exploded into a cloud of silver dust and flew everywhere. The bonfire below was extinguished by the wind and the 4 dried corpses turned into dust on the spot. Under the green veil, the black eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was understandable that Yu Qianqiu killed Fang Ming, but he didn't even let the 4 people go. She couldn't stand it anymore. She had been merciful all her life and hated killing the innocent. The one-armed old man's eyes flickered when he saw that his flying sword had been reduced to dust by Yu Qianqiu's palm. A fearless battle intent gradually overflowed from his body as he stared at Yu Qianqiu. The ghost manor didn't allow people to cause trouble. However, Fang Ming had offended someone he shouldn't have, so he didn't stop Niu Yud from killing Fang Ming. However, after Niu Yud killed Fang Ming, he turned around and killed 4 people. He simply didn't respect the ghost manor's guardian at all. Since he broke the rules here, he naturally had to teach him a lesson. However, he didn't expect Niu Yud to be able to shatter the flying sword he released with one palm strike. Moreover, it was shattered. This cultivation was quite frightening. He was confident that he could also easily shatter a normal flying sword with one palm strike. However, it was impossible for him to shatter a flying sword into dust. He now suspected that Niu Yud was a soul formation stage expert who was hiding his identity and purposely came to cause trouble. This was because even he couldn't see through Niu Yud's cultivation. One could only imagine Niu Yud's cultivation. For a moment, his battle intent soared. However, just as he slowly moved half a step, he suddenly heard a soft sigh. The voice transmitted, "Forget it. This person's background isn't simple. He also has a deep relationship with Nongzhu. Let him go." "Miss, do you know this person?" The one-armed old man was startled. He transmitted his voice back, "Who is he?" Chapter 541. "If I'm not wrong, he's Yu Qianqiu." The mysterious woman transmitted her voice. "He's Yu Qianqiu? How can he have such a high cultivation?" However, his ruthless style of doing things is similar to that fella in the legends. The one-armed old man said in disbelief, "Yu Qianqiu has been the person that the loose cultivators talked about the most during this period of time. To think that he dared to come here under such circumstances. He's quite bold. What's real and what's fake? I wonder which one is the real one," the mysterious woman muttered. "Miss, what did you say?" the one-armed elder asked in surprise. He didn't understand what she meant. She had just said that this person was Yu Qianqiu. Why couldn't she tell the real one from the fake one now? Yu Qianqiu hovered in the air and narrowed his eyes at the one-armed elder. He was prepared to fight. What made him wary was that he didn't know how high this mysterious elder's cultivation was. When the other party casually swung out his sword, there was a faint sound of wind and thunder. This was something he had never seen before, even when fighting against cultivators at the late tribulation stage. Could this old fellow be at the soul formation stage? Yu Qianqiu was slightly alarmed. He secretly locked onto Utopia with his divine sense. If he couldn't do it, he would leave. What surprised him was that after the one-armed elder attacked, he only looked at him deeply before turning and retreating to the side. As for the mysterious veiled woman, she leisurely rose into the air like Chang'e flying to the moon. When she rose into the air, the veil on her head tilted slightly. Yu Qianqiu could clearly sense that the woman was looking at him. Following that, a green figure disappeared into the night sky. What was this woman's background? And what was the relationship between the one-armed elder and them? Yu Qianqiu couldn't figure it out. In the pavilion, the one-armed elder was drinking alone under the incandescent lamp. He was holding the wine jar that Yu Qianqiu had given him. It was as if nothing had happened. Damn it. If I had known earlier, I would have poisoned the wine and let you drink slowly. Yu Qianqiu gnashed his teeth in hatred. He thought to himself, "Old man, don't be so smug. This wine isn't that tasty." Floating in the air, he transmitted his voice to Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing, "Go back." His figure immediately shot into the ghost manor. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing glanced at each other. Previously, Boss had said that he was in the core formation stage, but later on, it was shown that his cultivation level was far higher than that. The fact that he could fly in the air was proof enough. Now, he simply used the voice transmission technique, which could only be done by cultivators at the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. The two of them were a little excited because with the protection of such an expert, ordinary people in the cultivation world wouldn't dare to touch them in the future. This was equivalent to a big backer. The two of them did not dare to hesitate and quickly chased after him on their swords. Yen Lan and the other girls nodded and followed him. The rogue cultivators in the surroundings looked at each other. They never expected that someone would dare to make a move in the ghost manor. Someone asked, "Who knows the two rogue cultivators following Niu Yud? I think I've seen them somewhere before." The taller one is called Fu Chun, and the shorter one is called Qin Jiaxing. They are just small fries in the foundation building stage. TSK. What kind of dog *T luck did these two fellows run into? They actually managed to find such a powerful backer. Another person replied. Everyone who was listening revealed an envious expression. They were very, very envious, not just envious. Although the identity of a cultivator in a famous sect had many benefits, and everyone was eager to join it. However, the founders of those famous sects were almost all rogue cultivators. Moreover, they were talented rogue cultivators. There was no other reason. Most of the cultivators who came from sects followed the cultivation methods of their sects step by step. Within the framework drawn by their ancestors, very few could surpass their ancestors. Although the life of a rogue cultivator was hard and tiring, those talented rogue cultivators were different. They all relied on their extremely high talent to walk a path that belonged to them. Only then could they establish their own sects and compete with the cultivators in the world. Among the top 10 cultivators in the world, which one of them wasn't a rogue cultivator? Among the rogue cultivators, they had never heard of someone named Nyo Yid. However, judging from his powerful skills in various situations today, he might also be a talented rogue cultivator. To be able to follow such a person, once he established his own sect, the person who followed him would definitely have an extraordinary status in the sect. How could those rogue cultivators who had attached themselves to famous sects and clans compare to them? That was why everyone envied Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing. If they could befriend each other now, they might have a way out in the future. What surprised Yu Qianqiu was that the ruthless magistrate that he casually mentioned became Nyo Yid's nickname. Moreover, because of his fight with the one-armed old man, it didn't take long for the news to spread throughout the cultivation world. Returning to the small courtyard with 6 rooms, Yu Qianqiu sent the 6 girls away and called Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing to his room. Seeing that he was serious, the two of them couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't know why their boss was looking for them. Yu Qianqiu took out 2 storage bags and threw them to the two of them. The two of them caught the bags and looked at each other. Then they immediately injected their divine senses into the bags. If they didn't look, they wouldn't know. Once they saw it, they were shocked. Their eyes widened and they couldn't speak. There were so many spirit stones in the bags. For them, it was indeed a lot. They had never seen so many spirit stones in their lives. The two of them looked at Yu Qianqiu in confusion. They didn't know why he gave them so many spirit stones. There are 2 million top-grade spirit stones in each storage bag. It's enough for you to use. Yu Qianqiu smiled. For us. The two of them asked almost at the same time. Don't worry. Yu Qianqiu took out 2 purple true restriction-breaking pills, and threw them to the two of them. It's your luck that you met me. Today I'll help you break through to the early stage of tribulation passing. The two of them were dumbfounded. They thought they had heard wrong. Cultivation was about progressing step by step. The two of them were only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. How could they break through to the early stage of tribulation passing? Don't doubt me. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the purple spirit pills in their hands and said, the spirit pills in your hands are called restriction-breaking pills. They were made according to a recipe passed down from ancient times. Because the spirit herbs needed to make them are extremely difficult to gather, they have never appeared in the cultivation world. That's why very few people know about them. Although the two of them didn't have high cultivation levels, when they saw the halo on the spirit pills, they were a bit confused. Just by looking at the quality of the spirit pills, it was obvious that they were made by a top-notch alchemist. A normal alchemist would have a hard time making spirit pills with a halo. Fu Chun held it in her hands and said excitedly, Boss, do you mean that this restriction-breaking pill can increase a person's cultivation level? Qin Jiaxing smelled the fragrance of the spirit pills obsessively. Take the spirit pills, catalyze the medicinal properties, and then absorb the spiritual energy inside the spirit stones. When the time comes, you will know if I'm telling the truth. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and said, Give it a try. Yes. The two of them nodded. They were so excited that they didn't know what to say. Without hesitation, they stuffed the spirit pills into their mouths and sat down cross-legged to regulate their breathing. The two of them didn't have the slightest doubt because they felt that their boss had no reason to harm them. Moreover, with their status, neither of them was worth 2 million high-grade spirit stones. Spending 4 million high-grade spirit stones to harm insignificant people like them would be more likely to be crazy. With their boss's cultivation level, it would be easy for him to kill them. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Not long after, the two of them started to turn red. Hot air came out of their mouths and noses. They couldn't help but tremble. They looked like they were in pain. Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, Hurry up and absorb the spirit stones. The two of them trembled and quickly took out the spirit stones from their storage pouches to absorb the spirit stones. One after another. Not long after, the painful expression on their faces became comfortable. At the same time, there was a hint of surprise as if they enjoyed this feeling. 2 hours later, the two of them opened their eyes one after another. They looked at each other and jumped up. Qin Jiaxing stammered, I? I broke through to the late stage of foundation establishment. Fu Chun was also excited. Me too. Calm down, what will make you excited is yet to come. Yu Qianqiu sat on a chair and said disapprovingly. He placed 2 piles of spirit pills on the side table. In each pile were 7 purple limit-breaking pills and 3 colorful spirit pills with the halo of a rainbow-colored pill. The latter was the 7 treasures pill made from the rainbow-colored Lingji. It was the best spirit pill for breaking through bottlenecks. From foundation establishment to core formation, nascent soul, and tribulation passing stage, there are 3 bottlenecks. These 3 rainbow-colored spirit pills are rare spirit pills for breaking through bottlenecks. You can take 1 for each bottleneck. Yu Qianqiu smiled and knocked on the table. Each of you take 1 pile. It should help you break through to the early stage of tribulation passing stage. Damn it. I have spirit stones and spirit pills, don't let me down. The 2 of them were so excited that they didn't know what to say. Happiness came too suddenly. They never thought such a good thing could happen. They thought they were dreaming. Fu Chun took a deep breath and bowed. Fu Chun will obey your orders from now on. Then she calmly took the 10 spirit pills that belonged to her. Qin Jiaxing stared blankly for a moment before he quickly bowed and saluted. Qin Jiaxing will definitely listen to boss's instructions from now on. Then he quickly took the pills on the tea table. Yu Qianqiu smiled and didn't say anything. He raised his hand and gestured for them to continue. The 2 of them looked at each other and stood side by side. They bowed to him again and continued to take the spirit pills to absorb the spirit qi. After the 2 of them closed their eyes, Yu Qianqiu's face became expressionless, and his fingers tapped on the surface of the coffee table. The purple restriction-breaking pill that the 2 of them had consumed was the same as the one that most of the members of Utopia had consumed. It could rapidly raise one's cultivation to the early stage of tribulation passing. The only flaw of this pill was that although it could help speed up cultivation, the person who took this pill would only be able to reach the late stage of tribulation passing stage. There was almost no hope of breaking through to the soul formation stage. The white restriction breaking pill could avoid this flaw, but there was another flaw. Every time they took one, they would be stiff and unable to move for a month. If the 2 of them took the white restriction breaking pill, they would need at least 8 months to break through to the early stage of tribulation passing stage. What he lacked the most right now was time. It was urgent. Chapter 542. Jumping out of the Chinese cultivation world was a hasty decision. At first he was worried that he had made the wrong move. But now he could confidently tell himself that this trip was worth it. He learned many things he didn't know. It also gave him a very serious sense of crisis. Looking at the problem from this perspective, he had a lot of feelings about the overall situation of the cultivation world. Previously, when he made a ruckus in the closed Chinese cultivation world, he was indeed a frog at the bottom of a well. The outside world was very vast and spectacular. There were indeed many experts in the cultivation world. There were many things that the Chinese cultivation world couldn't come into contact with. Combining the situation of the Chinese cultivation world and the countries here, he could now say with certainty that the Chinese cultivation world was definitely not a match for the combined forces of the various countries. Not to mention the soul formation experts, just the final stage tribulation passing experts alone were countless. The various countries didn't even use their true strength in the war against the Chinese cultivation world. Why was it like this? Yu Qianqiu felt a lingering fear just thinking about it. It was obvious that they were waiting for something, for Bai Changchun to go to the Eastern Holy Land. Yu Qianqiu now truly understood Master Bai Changchun's position in the cultivation world. As long as Bai Changchun was still in the cultivation world, the entire world wouldn't be chaotic. Perhaps Bai Changchun only needed a glance to scare all the experts in the world into trembling with fear. No one would dare to move. Yin Baikong's cultivation was high, right? The World Commerce Association's power was great, right? He still kept a low profile, afraid of angering a certain someone. Even if he didn't say anything and just watched coldly from the demon ghost region. Whether it was this late-stage soul formation expert or that late-stage soul formation expert, who would dare to use the full strength of their country to attack the Chinese cultivation world? No one dared to step forward. That #1 expert in the world definitely didn't blink when he killed people. His iron-blooded methods had already deterred the entire world. Who could make all the soul formation experts in the world obediently gather together with just one word? Thinking about it, it could only be Bai Changchun. Yu Qianqiu even suspected that the so-called East Sea War was just his master deliberately trying to scare those so-called experts. Because the rumors of the star bead appeared too suddenly, the experts from various countries were all restless. At that time, Bai Changchun went on a killing spree and killed more than 10 deity transformation stage experts in a row. Immediately, everyone was so frightened that they didn't dare to act blindly without thinking, and all of them became well-behaved. Just to prevent soul formation experts from interfering in the war? If it was before he came to the various countries, Yu Qianqiu might have believed this saying. But now he didn't believe it. Did Bai Changchun not know the strength of each country? Even if the soul formation experts didn't intervene, the Chinese cultivation world wouldn't be a match for the combined forces of the various countries. Wouldn't the Battle of the East Sea be unnecessary? Bai Changchun shouldn't be such a boring person, right? Why didn't the other countries attack the Chinese cultivation world? They only sent people to test the waters. Clearly, Bai Changchun's threat in the East Sea was effective. Although he said that the other soul formation cultivators wouldn't intervene, he wouldn't intervene either. However, he had shown that he wanted to protect the Chinese cultivation world. Who would dare to bite the bullet and come? Wouldn't that be courting death? Yu Qianqiu now had a bold guess. The rumor about the star orb came so suddenly that Bai Changchun didn't seem to expect it. But he suddenly gathered all the soul formation experts in the world to threaten them, but he didn't invite the second strongest expert in the world, Wen Lanfeng. When he was about to leave the monster ghost region and there was no successor for the torture envoy, he left Wen Lanfeng behind. Could it be that the old man decided to let Wen Lanfeng inherit the position of the torture envoy of the monster ghost region? Thinking back to the last time at the Baiwan embassy in Dayang City, Nongzhu had told Wen Rui why Bai Changchun didn't invite Wen Lanfeng to the East Sea. However, Nongzhu hesitated and didn't explain it. It seemed that there was some hidden reason. Judging from this, the possibility was very high. In the cultivation world, apart from Bai Changchun, it seemed that only Wen Lanfeng could intimidate the heroes of the world. However, his sudden appearance seemed to have changed Bai Changchun's mind. He who had never accepted disciples accepted him as his disciple. Furthermore, he had already hinted that he would be the next torture enforcer. Did Bai Changchun think that his achievements in the future would be higher than Wen Lanfeng's? Even Yu Qianqiu didn't believe this reason. He was an expert at the late soul formation stage. He thought about it until his scalp went numb. He couldn't figure out what the old man wanted, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Maybe he was worrying too much. Master didn't have so many plans at all. Otherwise, he would have killed all the soul formation experts. But he was very sure of one thing. Master was determined to go to the Holy East Land. Once he left the cultivation world, all the countries would definitely join forces to attack the cultivation world of Wuxia. Not only the cultivation world but the secular world would also experience a great calamity. A war to divide the interests of Wuxia was inevitable. At that time the world would be in chaos. After understanding the general situation, Yu Qianqiu calculated that it would not be long before his master left for the Eastern Holy Land. He immediately felt that he was pressed for time. There was only 1 or 2 years left, which was nothing for the long life of a cultivator. But for him it was really urgent. In 1 or 2 years, once the cultivation world of Wuxia was defeated. If he didn't have enough strength to operate in the cultivation world and support Shi Wenguang's army would be the first to bear the brunt. Although the cultivation world wouldn't directly intervene, if the armies of hundreds of countries joined forces, no matter how good Shi Wenguang was at fighting, it would be hard for him to deal with them. His years of hard work would go down the drain. Yu Qianqiu sat on the chair and smiled bitterly. To be honest, before leaving the cultivation world of Wuxia, he didn't care much about who won or lost. But now, for the sake of his own interests, he couldn't let the cultivation world of Wuxia defeat them. He had to help them even if he didn't want to. Regardless of what his master was thinking, he had to prepare for a rainy day and make preparations just in case. In the next 1 or 2 years he had to weaken the strength of the countries as much as possible. Thinking of this, he took out a red spirit pill and played with it in his hand. When he first refined this pseudo-limit breaking pill, it was prepared for the Daluo sect. But now, it seemed that the Daluo sect was a force that couldn't be ignored in the cultivation world of Wuxia, so there was no hurry to deal with them. This pseudo-limit breaking pill might have to be used on someone else. As he pondered, he sat on the chair until the next day, when Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing forcefully increased their cultivation to the early stage of the tribulation passing stage. The two of them stood up excitedly. Roar! They couldn't help but let out 2 clear roars, causing the room to buzz. Under the grapevines outside, the 6 women were wondering why the 3 men were hiding in the room for an entire day. Could it be that they were gay? When they suddenly heard the 2 clear roars, their expressions changed. From the deafening roars, they could tell that the cultivation of the 2 people who made the sounds was much higher than theirs. When did other people enter the room? In the ghost manner, many wandering cultivators looked over. Yu Qianqiu leaned back on the chair and looked at the two of them with half-opened eyes. He smiled slightly. It was understandable how the two of them felt. Anyone who spent a day to break through from the foundation establishment stage to the tribulation passing stage would be overjoyed. They had seen many similar things in Utopia. Of course it was a good thing, but what the two of them didn't know was that they basically had no chance of breaking through to the soul formation stage in this lifetime. He didn't know if the two of them would have other thoughts after they found out. Therefore, Yu Qianqiu didn't tell the two of them about the drawbacks of the purple limit-breaking pill. Yu Qianqiu knew that he might be a little unreasonable, but his way of thinking might be a little cruel to others. His reasoning was very simple. The two of them were wandering cultivators with mediocre aptitudes. If they hadn't met him in this chaotic cultivation world, what chance would they have of increasing their cultivation to the early stage of the tribulation passing stage in this lifetime? The chance was probably zero. Not to mention cultivating to the soul formation stage. That's right, he wanted to use the two of them, so he took out a few million spirit stones to increase their cultivation to the tribulation passing stage. However, Yu Qianqiu thought that this was an opportunity for them. Others might not have this opportunity. Some things might make people unhappy if they were too clear about it. For their own good, his own good and mine, it was better to hide it. He thought that this kind of concealment was rational and kind. How's the effect? Are there any adverse effects on your body? Check it carefully. Yu Qianqiu leaned his arm on the tea table, his head half propped up as he smiled. The two of them nodded and quickly checked their bodies. Apart from the damage caused by forcefully increasing their cultivation, they were fine. Boss, there's no problem. Fu Chun clenched her fists and said excitedly. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that such a day would come. Boss, there's no problem with me either. Qin Jiaxing kept rubbing his face with his palms. He was indescribably excited. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled as he looked at the two of them checking their cultivation. After a while, the two of them calmed down a little. Fu Chun brought the storage bag over respectfully and said, Boss, there's still about 800,000 high-grade spirit stones. Qin Jiaxing didn't dare to keep it to himself and brought it over respectfully. Yu Qianqiu sat up straight and waved his hand with a smile. I'm an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator now. I'm no longer a poor itinerant cultivator. How can I not have some money? Keep it for yourself. The two of them were a little embarrassed. Qin Jiaxing scratched his head and giggled. This was happiness. In the past, they were just poor itinerant cultivators. I still stand by my words. As long as you follow me sincerely, I guarantee that you'll have a good life. Yu Qianqiu stood up and patted their shoulders. Help me do things well. Good days are yet to come. The two of them didn't know what to say. They just kept nodding and giggling. After I made my move last night, I'm sure many itinerant cultivators will come to fawn over you. Yu Qianqiu walked around the two of them and said, if they find out that you're early-stage tribulation-passing cultivators, they'll be even more envious. You can tell everyone about the limit-breaking pill. Chapter 543. Both of them were shocked. Although their previous cultivation levels were low, they were still clear about one thing. If such a treasure was made public, it would probably cause great trouble. Boss, you have to think twice. Fu Chun cupped her hands and advised earnestly, this limit-breaking pill is really too magical. Once outsiders know about it, I'm afraid all the cultivators in the world will flock to snatch it. Just like that Yu Qianqiu, because of these two treasured sabers, ended up being chased and robbed by cultivators from various countries. That's right, that's right. Qin Jiaxing nodded repeatedly and said very sincerely, Boss, this kind of thing really can't be leaked. Such a precious treasure will really bring about a fatal disaster. I'm not afraid of the itch when I'm covered with lice. Yu Qianqiu smiled self-deprecatingly and waved his hand at the two who didn't understand, saying, just do as I say, nothing will happen. The two looked at each other and showed expressions of listening attentively. After all, they had just said that they would obey his orders. If they were to be long-winded, they would be suspected of being disobedient. Moreover, the two of them were now quite convinced of this boss. Who in the world could raise the cultivation level of a foundation establishment cultivator to the tribulation passing stage in one day? They didn't know whether others had this ability or not. In any case, they had never heard of it. Such a miraculous method, coupled with his powerful skills and mysterious origin, made the two of them fear and respect him. Yu Qianqiu was very satisfied with their performance and said slowly, if someone asks you about the improvement of your cultivation level, It's okay for you to disclose the limit-breaking pill. Just say that I'm going to make a lot of it, and on the day of the treasure basin gathering, I will sell it to the cultivators in the world. Of course, some things can't be said completely. What could be said and what could not be said he carefully explained to the two of them. After figuring it out, the two of them looked at each other. They didn't know what the boss was going to do, but it wasn't good for them to ask, so they promised to do as he said. At this moment, the room suddenly darkened, and there was a faint sound of thunder in the sky outside. Yu Qianqiu's expression changed slightly. He glanced at the two of them and quickly opened the door and walked out. Yan Lan and the other girls were looking around the courtyard. When they saw Yu Qianqiu coming out, they all bowed and greeted him, Mr. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at them and looked up into the sky. Dark clouds were rolling overhead, and there were lightning bolts intertwining in the sky. Lightning snakes flickered in and out of the dark clouds. This was especially true for the area above their heads, where the clouds were as black as ink and lightning snakes were flashing. The 6 girls looked at each other. They had seen this phenomenon many times in the Misty Rain Tower. Yan Lan said in surprise, "It's a tribulation cloud. Could it be that someone is going through a tribulation in this ghost manor?" When Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun heard this, their expressions changed. Of course, they knew who was going to undergo the tribulation. The former asked fearfully, "Boss, what should we do?" The two of them had never experienced such a scene before, so they were more or less afraid. They couldn't help but ask their boss for help. It's not a big deal to go through the tribulation in the early stage. Yu Qianqiu had seen many people go through the tribulation in Utopia, so he was already used to it. There was indeed nothing to be afraid of in the early stage. Even if he was going through the tribulation himself, although he was struck by lightning and fainted, he could just sleep in a daze and muddle through it. It was nothing. Let's go into the mountain. It's big enough there. Yu Qianqiu flew towards the back of the mountain. The two of them didn't dare to hesitate and quickly followed him. Seeing that Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun could actually fly in the air, coupled with what the 3 of them said just now, the 6 girls were so shocked that their jaws dropped. After a while, Yanxia stammered, Could it be that Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing are going through the tribulation? Oh, how is this possible? It wasn't just the 6 of them. Many people in the ghost manor were also looking at the sky and wondering who was going through the tribulation. When they suddenly saw Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun flying in the air, they all rubbed their eyes, thinking that they were seeing things. After asking the people around them, they realized that it was very likely to be true. How was this possible? Many people flew into the air, wanting to follow them to see what was going on. In the next few days, Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing, whose cultivations had risen to the early stage of tribulation passing, had a comfortable life. The two of them arrogantly scurried around the ghost manor, accepting the flattery of the loose cultivators. Although they were going around to complete the task given by their boss, the feeling of being flattered by everyone made the two of them feel a little complacent. They didn't know who they were anymore. Yu Qianqiu really couldn't stand it anymore. Their morals. Naturally, he had to pour some cold water on them to wake them up. He seriously warned the two of them. The two of them had only reached the early stage of tribulation passing, and their real strength was still far from the early stage of tribulation passing. If any powerful early stage nascent soul cultivator couldn't stand the sight of you, they would definitely kill you. Don't be too arrogant. Yu Qianqiu's words weren't alarmist words. How could a cultivator who had risen to the early stage of tribulation passing in a day compare to a cultivator who had cultivated for 100 years, or even hundreds of years? Not to mention the profoundness of their cultivation arts, just their actual combat strength alone was a world of difference. A slightly stronger early stage nascent soul cultivator wouldn't have a problem killing them. The level of one's cultivation didn't necessarily determine one's strength. This wasn't just a saying. Yu Qianqiu understood this very well. Precisely because he understood this, the members in Utopia who had forcefully raised their cultivation were forced to continuously train with all their might. This was so that when they faced actual combat, they would be able to minimize the number of casualties to the greatest extent. After being reprimanded, the two of them knew that their boss wasn't lying. After their minds became clearer, they restrained themselves a lot. In these few days, the ruthless magistrate Niu Yud would also walk around the ghost manor every day. At the same time, the cultivation world's butcher Yu Qianqiu would often appear around the fog forest. The secret of entering and leaving the fog forest. As a result, many cultivators were attracted over. However, a butcher was a butcher, and those who were unlucky enough to encounter him rarely managed to escape alive. When a large number of people rushed over, everyone could only watch as he escaped into the fog forest. There was nothing they could do about him. Once everyone relaxed, this fellow became energetic again. Without anyone noticing, he would sneak out to commit crimes. He killed a few people here and there, causing those who suffered losses to want to pull out his tendons and skin him alive. However, this fellow was even more slippery than a loach, and it was very difficult to catch him. At the most, more than 50 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts trapped him in a valley. However, in the end, no one could figure out what was going on. Everyone searched everywhere, but they still couldn't find him. In the end, he still managed to slip away. Then he turned around and appeared somewhere else. He charged into a group of nascent soul cultivators and slaughtered them, killing nearly 100 people in one go. When more than 50 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts rushed over to help, that fellow ran away again. The cultivators of the various countries were filled with hatred. They looked at the heavens speechlessly. They gritted their teeth so hard that they were about to shatter, and they almost burst into tears. So many experts couldn't catch an early-stage tribulation transcendence expert. Furthermore, he often appeared right under their noses. This group of people had lost all their face. Yu Qianqiu's strategy was very effective in dealing with this group of people. To sum it up, the enemy was tired, I would disturb. The enemy was strong, I would retreat. The enemy chased, I would run. If anyone was careless, I would be ruthless. Just when Yu Qianqiu was causing quite a stir among the various countries, a ruthless judge, Niu Yud, suddenly appeared in the Jinshan country's ghost village. This person's appearance more or less stole the limelight from the butcher Yu Qianqiu. The experts of various countries temporarily stopped dealing with Yu Qianqiu and focused their attention here. Ordinary cultivators in the cultivation world didn't know who the one-armed old man of the ghost village was, but the higher-ups of the various countries knew. This Niu Yud was actually able to shatter the one-armed old man's flying sword with one palm strike. Furthermore, he had shattered it into powder. It was truly unbelievable. When did such an expert appear in the cultivation world? What shocked them the most was that this Niu Yud was actually able to forcibly raise the cultivation of 2 foundation establishment stage loose cultivators to the early stage of tribulation passing within a day. Many people had seen it with their own eyes. This was simply too inconceivable. Limit-breaking pill. Limit-breaking pill. Limit-breaking pill. What a distant word. It was so distant that people had almost forgotten about it. Legend had it that during the chaotic battles of ancient times, a capable person with special abilities had refined a very overbearing spirit pill in order to gain the upper hand in the battle. It could forcibly raise the cultivation of the cultivators under him to the tribulation passing stage in a short period of time. This was only a legend. As for what exactly was going on, no one knew. They had only vaguely heard that this spirit pill was called the limit-breaking pill. Niu Yud could actually refine the limit-breaking pill. It was said that he could also refine it in large quantities and was even preparing to sell it at the cornucopia gathering in the future. This news was even more shocking than him shattering the one-armed old man's flying sword. Just think about it, which of the various countries' soul formation experts didn't have 1,000 or 800 cultivators under their command? Those with great powers even had tens of thousands of cultivators under their command. There were even some that had close to 100,000 cultivators under their command. For example, Yin Baikong's World Chamber of Commerce. The World Chamber of Commerce had more than 100,000 disciples. Although it was a mix of good and bad and most of them had low cultivation. But what if they had the limit-breaking pill? 100,000 tribulation-passing experts, oh my god. Just thinking about it made people's blood boil. The headquarters of the World Chamber of Commerce, Cornucopia, God of Wealth Peak. On the God of Wealth Peak, the wind and clouds surged, causing people's clothes to flutter. At this time, the 3 people's emotions were the same, making it impossible for them to calm down. Yin Baikong, dressed in a black robe, stood tall on the peak of the mountain. No matter how strong the wind caused his robe to flutter, he didn't move an inch. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared in the direction of the Golden Mountain country. However, under his slightly shriveled cheeks, one could clearly see his muscles twitching non-stop. It was obvious that his heart wasn't as calm as it looked. Sikongju and Jing Yuankong silently stood behind their master. Limit-breaking pill. Sikongju's eyes flickered. As Yin Baikong's head disciple, he had followed his master for the longest time. At the same time, he was also his master's most trusted disciple. Some things were secrets between master and disciple. Sikong, is the news reliable? Yin Baikong asked without turning his head. Sikongju respectfully replied, we have planted our spies in the ghost manor. They saw it with their own eyes, so it shouldn't be wrong. Yin Baikong slightly nodded his head with his back facing the two. His voice was still calm as he said, Sikong, let's put the other matters aside for now. Pick enough capable people and personally go to the Golden Mountain country. Chapter 544. Yes. Sikong Ju answered decisively. He understood that if the limit-breaking pill was really that miraculous, it was too important to world commerce. Yin Baikong gradually turned around. He first glanced at Jing Yuankong, then at Sikong Ju and said, "The limit-breaking pill is extremely important. Logically speaking, I should personally make a trip, but I have to give face to the one-armed geezer, so it's not convenient for me to interfere. Not to mention Wen Lanfeng." Feeling that he had gone off topic, he paused and continued, "It would be best if you can invite that Niu Yi to our world commerce. If not, see if you can buy the limit-breaking pills recipe. It doesn't matter if the price is high as long as it's not too outrageous. In short, before we can guarantee the interests of world commerce, Niu Yud and the limit-breaking pills recipe cannot fall into the hands of others. It's too big of a threat to our world commerce. If necessary, we'd rather destroy it." Disciple understands. Sikong Ju bowed slightly and frowned. What if the lords of other countries interfere? Yin Baikong put his hands behind his back and said, "You don't have to worry about this. One-armed old devil still has Lu Yanqing behind him. The lords of other countries won't run to Ghost Manor without any qualms. Not to mention Wen Lanfeng has already started meeting guests. I'm afraid everyone will have to go to Baiwan Nation first. I'll think of a way to hold them back and give you enough time." Disciple will do his best. Sikong Ju bowed. As for what to do, you have to know your limits. Try not to clash with one-armed old devil. Taking 10,000 steps back, didn't Niu Yid say he's going to sell the limit-breaking pill at the Treasure Basin gathering? If we can stop the others from succeeding before then, when the cornucopia meeting is held with the financial resources of our world commerce, we will also be the biggest winner, Yin Baikong said confidently. Yes. Sikong Ju also became confident. With his master holding back the other experts, he had nothing to worry about. "Yuan Kong, your eldest senior brother and I aren't here, so I'll leave the house to you," Yin Baikong called out. "Disciple will definitely guard the house well and not let master and senior brother have any worries," Jing Yuan Kong replied. After giving some instructions, Yin Baikong quickly left in the direction of Baiwan Nation and disappeared into the distance. The two brothers also went down the mountain. One continued with his own work, while the other gathered people and prepared to go to the Jinshan Kingdom. In fact, it was not only the World Chamber of Commerce that took action. All the other countries were like cats that smelled blood, sending their most capable disciples and subordinates to the Golden Mountain country. For a time, the Yu Qianshou incident in the Jinshan Kingdom had not been settled yet, and now Niu Yid had stirred up a storm. One wave after another. Those cultivators who could only watch the show and could not get involved couldn't help but sigh. The current cultivation world was really in troubled times. Previously, the cornucopia had been pushed back from the 8th major event to the 9th major event. Now, it seemed that it had been pushed back by the limit-breaking pill incident, and the cornucopia could only be demoted to 10th again. Baiwan Nation's sacred land, in the back room of the sacred palace, when Lanfeng slowly walked out of a complex sound transmission array filled with spirit stones. When he was on Obedient Island, he had obtained the coordinates of old ancestor Nanming's message formation. Just now, he had informed Obedient Island about the situation. The person he was talking to was Nongzhu, who had nothing better to do. He could imagine the scene of old ancestor Nanming shouting at the top of his lungs when he found out. Outside the curved arched door of the back room, when Rui greeted Wen Lanfeng, who had a slight smile on his face. He found that since the last time the old ancestor returned from the demon domain, there would be a smile on his face from time to time. The melancholy that always hung on his face had lightened a lot, as if he had let go of something that could not be resolved in his heart. What puzzled him the most was that although the old ancestor was defeated by Changchun, he often maintained contact with the demon domain. "Old ancestor, according to your instructions, the guests who have been waiting for a long time have been arranged to the bank of the heart-cleansing lake," Wen Rui reported as he walked slowly with Wen Lanfeng. Under the bright and hazy light, Wen Lanfeng lost some of his melancholy and appeared somewhat graceful and luxurious. As he walked along the white jade corridor, he asked, "How many people have come?" "Nearly 100 soul formation experts from various countries have come, and more are coming," Wen Rui replied. "Oh, only nearly 100? Wen Lanfeng asked faintly, "Has the news that I want to meet the guests spread?" Wen Rui smiled and said, "The news has been released. Old ancestor, do you plan to meet them today?" Wen Lanfeng said disapprovingly, Wait for another day. Wait for more people. I don't have time to accompany them all day long. This. When Rui smiled bitterly, old ancestor, this is not good. Some of the people who came early have been waiting for more than 10 days. Some people are already cursing us, saying that they have never seen us treat guests like this. Some people even said that if you don't show up, they will go back. When Lan Feng stopped, turned around and said indifferently, go tell them that although my place is not as good as the demon domain's obedient island, it is not a place where anyone can come and go as they please. If they have the guts, they can try. When the time comes, I will personally visit them. The majesty of the world's second expert was revealed in an instant. Then he snorted as he walked, looks like I have to learn from Bai Changchun. Sometimes being too polite to others is not necessarily a good thing. Obedient Island is still peaceful and free. Who would dare to disturb it? When Rui's expression twitched. Although it was a good thing that the old ancestor's fighting spirit had reappeared, he would offend many people if he told them the exact words. After all, Baiwan Nation was not as aloof as the demon domain. Everyone had frequent dealings with each other. Is there any news from the Misty Forest? When Lan Feng asked again. When Rui quickly caught up and replied, everyone's attention is now on the Ghost Manor. Over at the Misty Forest, Yu Qianqiu appeared a few times, but seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he hid in the Misty Forest and didn't appear again. What is this guy trying to do? When Lan Feng shook his head and smiled. When the news that there was a treasure left by the demon monarch of 10,000 swords in the Misty Forest, he was also tempted. Baiwan Nation was also gathering people to prepare for the treasure. But when he heard the news that it was Yu Qianqiu who leaked it, he immediately stopped the operation. Combined with Nongzhu's evaluation of Yu Qianqiu, he instinctively felt that there was something fishy about it. So he got in touch with Nongzhu on Obedient Island. When Nongzhu heard about it, she said suspiciously, based on that kid's character, even a piece of trash is divided into several storage bags. How could he easily tell others about such a precious treasure? When Lan Feng, are you sure about this news? Wait, even if it's true, don't make a fuss. Maybe it's that kid's up to something again. By the way, don't worry about him for now. Let's keep in touch and see what he's up to. Was there such a thing? When Lan Feng was speechless. In the following days, he jumped out of the scene and observed the changes from the perspective of an outsider. Sure enough, he found that none of the forces involved in this matter got any benefits. It seemed that they all suffered some losses. He kind of believed that it was Yu Qianqiu who was playing tricks on them. There are no soul formation experts in the Mist Forest who are involved, right? This was what Wen Lan Feng was worried about. He was worried that Yu Qianqiu would suffer losses and it would be hard to explain to that person on Obedient Island. When Rui knew that the ancestor had been watching Yu Qianqiu silently, even though he didn't hear it clearly from the ancestor during this period of time, he was quite protective of Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, there were soul formation experts who rushed to the Mist Forest before, but they were startled by that hero. They were afraid of following in the footsteps of Hua Zongming and Pu Taidong, so they rushed back to make arrangements. Even if they want to take action, I'm afraid they have to wait until they see you. The two had already walked out of the holy hall and were bathed in the sunshine outside. When Lan Feng stopped quietly and said slowly, go to the heart-cleansing lake, and tell them that I'll see them tomorrow. Obedient Island in the demon domain, on the edge of the 1,000-mile lake. Nongzhu was holding a long and slender golden sword. She flicked it with her fingers and sighed constantly. After a long time, he turned around and pointed at the ancestor of Nanming helplessly and said, You're also known as the #1 blacksmith in the cultivation world. The materials that Old Bai collected with great difficulty to refine an upper-grade spiritual treasure were actually refined into a middle-grade spiritual treasure by you. I don't even know what to say about you. The Nanming old ancestor, who had a strong body and a tall physique, hung his head and said somewhat innocently, I was very confident this time and was about to succeed. At the crucial moment, who knew that Qinghua would play tricks on us? The intensity of the fire fluctuated. It's like seeing a ghost. He said to Bai Changchun, who was standing quietly by the lake with great shame, Bai Changchun, I'm really sorry. I didn't want this to happen. He didn't know how many times he had said this apology. Nongzhu rolled his eyes and knocked on his shoulder with his sword. He said with a hey, Old Bai is going to the East Holy Land. Don't you know what a good sword means to him? What's the use of just apologizing? I say, don't hide the treasures of your Xianxian Island anymore. Spill them all out and see if you can refine another one. The ancestor of Nanming's face twitched painfully. He pushed away the sword that Nongzhu put on his neck and gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I'll go back and take a look. I'll try to refine one before you go to the East Holy Land. I hope it can help you." "Ah, that's right." Nongzhu smiled wickedly. Shamelessly, she wrapped her arms around Nanming ancestor's neck and asked, "Do you want me to go with you?" The ancestor of Nanming pushed him away in disgust. Just as he was about to scold him, he heard Bai Changchun say indifferently, "Nanming, I appreciate your kindness. There's no need to trouble yourself. You don't have to feel guilty. I've seen the process of refining. It's not your fault. It's that Qinghua that suddenly had a problem. I lost my life. This is heaven's will." Nongzhu, who was making faces, and the disgusted ancestor of Nanming were stunned at the same time. Nongzhu said in shock, "Old Bai, what do you mean?" "Don't worry. It's okay. Nanming was willing to do it. No one forced him. Nanming, tell me, did you do it willingly?" As he spoke, he kicked the ancestor of Nanming's butt and let him speak for himself. Chapter 545. Ancestor Nanming glared at him with extreme disgust. This guy's habit of getting physical was really annoying. Unfortunately, he had made a mistake, so he didn't want to argue with him. He turned around and said, "Bai Changchun, try again." Bai Changchun turned around and said indifferently, "Thank you for your kindness, but there's really no need. I can't break your rules. Otherwise, when I go to the East Holy Land, you'll be in endless trouble." "Of course not." Nongzhu jumped between the two and patted her chest. "If we don't say it, who will know that Nanming broke the rules?" "Nongzhu, don't say any more. Rules are rules. If I break them once, there will be a second time. The rules of Shinshen Island can't be broken on my head. I can't afford to owe you this favor," Bai Changchun said. "What kind of stupid rules are those?" Nongzhu shouted at ancestor Nanming unreasonably. Nanming was speechless. He understood that Nongzhu was anxious about Bai Changchun's matter, so she spoke without thinking. "Nongzhu, don't make things difficult for him," Bai Changchun frowned. Nongzhu stared at ancestor Nanming angrily. The latter smiled helplessly and cupped his hands at Bai Changchun. "Bai Changchun, I'm really sorry. I'll take my leave first." He felt ashamed to stay any longer. Bai Changchun smiled faintly. He knew that ancestor Nanming would feel uncomfortable if he stayed. He raised his hand and thanked, "Sorry for the trouble, I won't see you out." "I wouldn't dare." Nanming shook his head in shame. Then he let out a clear whistle. After a while, his red dragon flapped its wings and flew over from afar. An illusory figure landed on the wyvern's back. Nanming, who was riding on the wyvern, was about to leave. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped his forehead, as if he had thought of something. "Bai Changchun, the cornucopia is about to be held. Maybe you can buy the materials you need. If you have all the materials, tell Nongzhu to bring this to me. I'll come immediately." Nanming threw out a dark shadow. Nongzhu caught it and took a look. It turned out to be the black tusk that was taken from the gate of the underworld to invite him. Bai Changchun was startled. "How can I do that? I have another item here. I can't break your rules." Nanming waved his hand and smiled. "My rules didn't say that I can't return someone's things. Bai Changchun, don't make me leave Obedient Island with guilt again." She still owed him a favor. Bai Changchun wasn't a long-winded person. He raised his hand to thank her for the second time and said, "I won't be sending you off. Farewell, Senior Nanming." On the other side, Zi and Hibiscus bowed together, while Miss Mu followed a few steps behind. "Farewell." Nanming returned the greeting and waved at the three women. The wyvern under his feet let out a dragon roar, then flapped its wings and quickly flew away, turning into a black dot and disappearing. Nongzhu weighed the thing in his hand and said with satisfaction, "This old man knows his place." He tossed it into his storage pouch and shook the golden sword in his hand. "Since you have no use for this, why don't you leave it with me for now? I'll keep it safe for you." As soon as he finished speaking, a strong force pulled the sword away from his hand. The sword was floating in front of Bai Changchun, and Bai Changchun was using 2 fingers to draw something on the sword. Nongzhu saw the word hibiscus engraved on the sword. Bai Changchun waved his sleeve and the golden sword flew out with a whoosh. It floated straight in front of Hibiscus, who was about to turn around, emitting a faint golden light. The 3 women looked at each other, then at the 2 seniors by the lake, not knowing what they meant. Zi suddenly exclaimed, "There are words on it. Hibiscus, ah. Hibiscus, your name is written on it." Zi immediately realized that it was a spiritual treasure given to Hibiscus by Senior Bai. She licked her lips with her bright red tongue and pushed Hibiscus with a face full of envy. Hurry up and thank Senior Bai. There are words personally engraved by Senior Bai on it. It's a gift for you. Miss Mu was also full of envy. A spiritual treasure with words personally engraved by Lord Torture Envoy. Ah, is it a gift for me? Hibiscus was at a loss of what to do. She looked at Bai Changchun weakly, only to see Bai Changchun slightly nodding at her. Thank you, master. Hibiscus hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. After staying here for a while, she had already followed Yu Qianqiu and called Bai Changchun master, under Nongzhu's instruction and Bai Changchun's tacit consent. Hibiscus was a little confused and didn't know what it meant. She just thought that she should call Bai Changchun master, after following Yu Qianqiu. Nongzhu secretly sighed that this girl had a good life and followed a good man. Although that guy was not a good person, he really treated her well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent her to Shuntian Island. In the end, she didn't know what kind of virtue this girl had accumulated in her previous life, but she actually fell for Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun, who had always been cold, suddenly asked Nongzhu one day, Yu Qianqiu is my disciple and Hibiscus is my disciple's wife. Shouldn't this girl also call me master like Yu Qianqiu? Isn't it a little inappropriate to call me senior? At that time, Nongzhu was completely dumbfounded as if she was struck by lightning. When she came to her senses, she kept digging her ears with her fingers, thinking that she had heard wrongly. She hurriedly asked, Old Bai, what did you say? Say it again, I didn't hear it clearly. Bai Changchun swung his hand and left with a bad look on his face. Ancestor Nanming, who was still present at that time, shook his head and said, That girl Hibiscus is so lucky. Nanming, what did Old Bai say just now? Nongzhu still couldn't believe it and pulled Ancestor Nanming to ask again. After Ancestor Nanming repeated Bai Changchun's words, Nongzhu was dumbfounded again. She had known Bai Changchun for so many years. This old guy was unyielding and would never give in to anyone or anything. Only others begged him, and he had never begged anyone or anything. When did she hear him say such words? Although it was a casual sentence, the meaning behind it was obvious. He wanted Hibiscus to call him master like Yu Qianqiu. However, with his proud and aloof character, it was impossible for him to take the initiative to ask Hibiscus to call him master. If Nongzhu wasn't stupid, she would know what to do. However, Nongzhu just wanted him to say it again. How could Bai Changchun say it again? Naturally, he swung his sleeves and left with a bad look. Pa. Nongzhu, who came to her senses, slapped herself hard on the face. Ancestor Nanming chuckled and said, Slap, slap hard. Slap another one. It was originally a teasing remark, but who knew that Nongzhu would slap another one hard, which made Ancestor Nanming dumbfounded. When did this guy become so obedient? Ancestor Nanming curiously stretched his head over and said suspiciously, Slap another one for me to see. *CKU. Nongzhu kicked him to the ground, turned around and left. This made Ancestor Nanming inexplicably jump up and curse. Crazy. After a while, Nongzhu dragged the frightened Hibiscus back. After finding Bai Changchun, she pointed to the ground and said to Hibiscus, Kneel down. From today on, you will follow Yu Qianqiu and call him master. Bai Changchun suppressed his anger and wanted to explode at Nongzhu. With his status in the cultivation world, did he need to force anyone to call him master? As long as he opened his mouth, there would be a long line of people begging him. He thought it was something important. So it was this. Hibiscus was stunned. She thought it was right to follow Yu Qianqiu and call him master. It was what she should do. She immediately knelt down and weakly called, Master. Bai Changchun, who was filled with rage, was called Master. Whether it was anger or anger, it all disappeared without a trace. After being stunned for a while, he raised his hand and said, Get up. From then on, Hibiscus called Bai Changchun master. Nongzhu still could not understand why this girl looked like an idiot and timid. How was she better than her daughter? She was not as pretty as her daughter. She had recommended her daughter Zi to old man Bai to be his disciple several times, but the old man just did not like her. She was so angry. When she asked about Hibiscus's background, she explained it clearly. She was originally the illegitimate daughter of an elder of Fuxian Island and was an ugly girl who was bullied. Later, Yu Qianqiu used the Rui pill to help her restore her appearance. Speaking of the Rui pill, Nongzhu was so angry at Yu Qianqiu. Last time in Dayang City, this guy said he only had one and Zi snatched it. She insisted that he pay for it. After asking Zi, she found out that this guy actually gave it to her. He did not snatch it at all. He was lying to her and there was more than one pill. Good boy, wait and see. Hand it over obediently and we'll talk later. Putting this matter aside, even if Hibiscus was from Fuxian Island, the #1 sect in China's cultivation world, she was not as good as the daughter of the island master of purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, the famous soul formation expert Nongzhu. After thinking about it, she could only think that Hibiscus was lucky. Perhaps old man Bai was doing this out of respect for his precious disciple. No matter what, this master was very, very precious. In the cultivation world, it was comparable to any powerful magic treasure. As long as Hibiscus said that her master was Bai Changchun, she could do whatever she wanted in the cultivation world. As long as Bai Changchun was alive, no one would dare to touch her. So, this girl's value doubled in the blink of an eye after she called him master. At this moment, Hibiscus stood up and reached out her hands to grab the sword with sincerity and excitement. No matter how immature she was, she knew that this sword was a spiritual treasure. She had only heard of it in legends. She did not expect to get one today. Moreover, it was originally the sword of the world's #1 expert, but now it was given to her. Before she could grab it, the sword lost its strength and gently fell into her hands. Hibiscus held it and bowed to Bai Changchun sincerely. Suddenly, her hands became light. Ziyi, who was at the side, shouted loudly as she snatched the treasured sword into her hands. She caressed it lovingly. Then she hugged Hibiscus and said, "Hibiscus, I'm so jealous of you." On the other side, when Nongzhu saw her daughter's pitiful look, she felt a surge of jealousy in her heart. With a livid face, she turned to look at Bai Changchun and said, "Old Bai, what do you mean? With our relationship, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Do you have any more treasures on Shantian Island? Find one, write something on it and give it to Ziyi." Chapter 546. He made it sound easy, but he made it sound like treasures were like weeds that could be plucked from the roots on Shantian Island. Bai Changchun glanced at him coldly. This guy would go crazy from time to time. Bai Changchun ignored him and turned to walk to the center of the island. Nongzhu blocked in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Z is your junior after all. It's not too much to ask you to give her a treasure as a gift." Bai Changchun stared at him, feeling angry and funny at the same time. Even if he wanted to give her a gift, he had never seen someone so thick-skinned as to ask for a gift. He said slowly, "I don't have any treasure here." Nongzhu was stunned. He believed what Bai Changchun said. He dared to say anything but he would never lie. So he said gloomily, "How about I find a treasure and you write something in front of Ziyi and then give it to her? I'm not as bored as you." Bai Changchun shouted in a low voice, "Get out of my way or don't blame me for being rude. I won't let you go even if you beat me to death." "Wait, I seem to have a sword at the level of spiritual treasure." Nongzhu checked his storage bag. He was fearless because he knew that Bai Changchun would not go too far even if he wanted to teach him a lesson. Bai Changchun's face instantly turned cold. He hated it when someone took advantage of his weakness. He made a grabbing gesture with his right palm, and there was a faint chi surrounding it. Obviously he wanted to teach Nongzhu a lesson. At this moment, Ziyi, who was hugging Furong, suddenly said with a stern expression, "Furong, how about I become Yu Chincho's woman like you? In that case I can also call Senior Bai master. Perhaps Senior Bai will also give me something." Lady Mu was stunned and so was Furong. The two girls looked at her serious face and did not know if she was joking or serious. Ziyi hugged Furong's arm and shook it. "What's wrong? Furong, are you not willing?" Furong was stunned and shook her head. She replied with difficulty, "No, as long as Yu Chincho is willing, I will listen to him." Her words were so powerful that Bai Changchun's anger disappeared completely. His expression was indescribable. He did not look at the girls but stared at Nongzhu. Time flew by in the blink of an eye, but none of them knew how precious it was. Nongzhu, who was engrossed in checking the storage bag, was stunned. In an instant she froze there motionlessly. After a long time, it was as if he had woken up from a deep slumber for millions of years. He slowly raised his head and met Bai Changchun's gaze. His eyes were a little unfocused as if he had been badly frightened. Then he slowly turned his head to look at the girls. A mocking expression slowly appeared on Bai Changchun's face. This expression had not appeared on his face for more than 2,000 years. He raised his finger and said, "Nongzhu, did you hear that? If you want me to give you a treasure with inscriptions, it's very simple. Purple dress, just do as you say." With their cultivation, it would be easy for them to not let the women hear their conversation. The three women looked at each other, each with their own thoughts, and did not pay attention to the movements of the two senior experts. After Ziyi heard Furong's reply, her face suddenly flushed red. She was stunned for a while before she suddenly smiled and said, "I was just joking with you. I won't be that swindler's woman. Furong, did I scare you?" As she said this, she stuffed the sword back into Furong's hand. Even though she said this, the guilty conscience in her eyes was noticed even by Furong, let alone the others. Furong opened her mouth but did not know what to say. Suddenly an angry roar resounded, "You didn't scare the others but you scared me." Nongju teleported over and stared at Ziyi with bright eyes. She said, "Ziyi, tell me, were the words you said just now the truth?" Ziyi's eyes darted around, not daring to meet her master's eyes. She pouted and said, "I was just joking." She replied casually, but in her heart Nongju said, "It's over, it's over." He was a veteran in love affairs and had dealt with countless women. What kind of women had he not seen? His daughter's words and actions had completely betrayed her inner thoughts. Nongju felt a little dizzy. Of all people, why did it have to be that guy with an extremely bad character, who made her gnash her teeth the most? Heavens, is this your retribution for me in this life? For the sake of my daughter, I have already cultivated myself. Why did you? Nongju silently raised her head and asked the heavens speechlessly, but the heavens were also speechless. Nongju, what kind of treasure do you want me to inscribe on? If worst comes to worst, I will go all out and personally go to Shenzhen Island to look for Nanming. Bai Changchun said with a serious face, adding insult to injury. Ziyi's pretty face turned even redder. She understood the unspoken meaning in Elder Bai's words. After looking at her daughter's face, Nongju really felt dizzy, so dizzy that the world was spinning. He held his forehead with one hand and shouted angrily, "Bai Changchun, shut up." Haha. For the first time in Obedient Island, the cruelest torture envoy in the history of the demon domain laughed heartily. With a flash, he disappeared into the door of the big house at the center of the island. "Master, what's wrong?" Ziyi asked guiltily, worried that her master was angered by her. "Nothing." Nongju waved her hand and said nothing more. He knew that it was useless to forcefully stop this kind of thing. It probably had no effect on that brat at all, and it would hurt his daughter's heart instead. He had hurt too many women's hearts in his life, but he didn't want to hurt his daughter. Retribution. I lost so miserably. Nongju murmured to herself with a pale face. She walked towards the big house in a daze, her back hunched and her steps staggered. Mr. Nongju, the famous free cultivator who was known as the most handsome man in the cultivation world, seemed to have aged 1,000 years in an instant. He had long noticed that his daughter had an unusual feeling for Yu Qianqiu, but his daughter had always been his darling, so how could he let that bastard take her away so easily? Therefore, Nongju had been holding back his anger, and from time to time he wanted to beat up Yu Qianqiu to vent his anger. He remembered that when Yu Qianqiu first came to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, he had warned Yu Qianqiu not to have any improper thoughts about his daughter. It seemed that that brat really did that, and he could see that Yu Qianqiu did not have any ideas about his daughter. However, the god of fate favored that brat very much, and helped that brat to put the shackles of fate on his daughter that she could not break free from. Yu Qianqiu, who was thousands of miles away, did not do anything to him, but hit his soft spot. Nongju, who had been secretly holding back his anger, was completely defeated. That was why he said, "I lost so miserably." The feeling of losing the most precious thing made him feel lost. Ziyi looked at her master's back blankly, wondering if she had done something wrong. Nongju staggered into the big house and collapsed on the ground. She seemed to have no strength left in her body, and lay there with her limbs open. Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged, stared at her and frowned. He knew that Nongju loved Ziyi and he could understand her feelings, but he did not say anything. There was silence between them. After a long time Nongju sighed, "Old Bai, you saw it?" "What?" "Ziyi and Yu Qianqiu. I never worry about that thing because it is useless to worry about it. The more I worry about it, the worse it will be." Bai Changchun shook his head slightly and then sighed, "Nongju, let go. Ziyi is not a child. You keep her by your side, which is not love. She needs her own life, good or bad, bitter or spicy. It is something she must experience in her life and she needs to taste it by herself. You filter all the taste and only give her sweet food. You should know that if she eats too much sweet food she will get tired of it, and it will also become bitter." Nongju stared at the beam of the house and murmured, "I don't want to restrict her, I just want her to have a good ending. The world is big and everything is reproduced, but they all end up in the same place. Only an eternity without eternity can be eternal, so what kind of ending is a good ending?" Bai Changchun asked, "Do you think that Yu Qianqiu's ending is not good for Ziyi?" Of course you think so. Yu Qianqiu is your disciple. Of course you think he is good. Nongzhu rolled his eyes, lying there. With a few words of consolation he felt a little better. He regained some of his vitality, unlike before when he was like a piece of rotten wood. Let's not talk about this, you won't listen to me. Help me do something, Bai Changchun said. Nongzhu, lying on the ground, tilted his head and asked, What is it? Find Yu Qianqiu and ask him what happened in the mist forest. Bai Changchun thought for a while and then said, Ask him why he can go in and out of the mist forest at will. Nongzhu's eyes brightened and he quickly climbed up, patted his forehead and said, Why didn't I think of this? If the treasure of the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch is really in the mist forest, it doesn't matter if the refining failed. With the convenience of Yu Qianqiu entering and exiting the mist forest at will, he should be able to get the sword of the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. Maybe he has already succeeded. TSK. Did you think of this a long time ago? No wonder you didn't have any reaction when the refining failed. Nonsense. Bai Changchun snorted. The mist forest is related to the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch, but it can't have the treasure of the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. Don't let your imagination run wild. Nongzhu raised his hand to pinch his chin, and looked at Bai Changchun suspiciously. How do you know the mist forest is related to the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch? How do you know that the treasure of the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch can't be in the mist forest? Did the former torturer tell you something? Don't be too curious. Some things have nothing to do with you and I won't tell you, so don't ask. Bai Changchun refused directly. Nongzhu was so curious that she scratched her head and ears, and the unhappiness just now had long disappeared. She tentatively asked, Is there a big secret in this? A big secret involving the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch? Tell me a little. Chapter 547. Bai Changchun glanced at him indifferently and said, The Demon King of Swords created the Demon King of Demons. Some things about him have been passed down from generation to generation by the torture envoys and will not be disclosed to outsiders. You had the chance to know but you gave it up. Even so, I can give you another chance. If you swear to take over as the next torturer, I'll tell you without you even asking. Do you really want to know? Nongzhu, who was dawdling and acting shamelessly, was stunned. His face twitched for a while before he shrank back and said embarrassedly, I just asked casually. It's fine if you don't want to tell me, but you don't have to be so serious. Don't you want to know? Bai Changchun snorted and said, I trust the judgment of the former torture envoy. Nongzhu waved his hand and said, Forget it. That old thing makes me nervous. You'd better tell your precious disciple. It was not worth it for him to put on the shackles of the Demon King of Demons for a secret that had nothing to do with him. He lived a carefree life now. He could eat, sleep, leave and stay as he pleased. The world was big and he could do whatever he wanted. Go early and come back early, Bai Changchun said coldly. He was urging him to hurry up and stop dawdling. Nongzhu got up unhappily and said while pulling his clothes, It's my bad luck to meet you. You always order me around. I just want to ask you a question. You can go by yourself. Why do you always ask me to pass the message? Although he said so, he also knew that if Bai Changchun showed up in all the countries to look for someone, it would be a little too noisy. This guy didn't show up easily. Once he did, he would shock the world and make all the practitioners panic. Those who didn't know would think that something big was going to happen again. There was no other way. He was so famous. Walking to the door, Nongzhu suddenly turned around and asked, According to the news from Wenlanfeng recently, Yu Qianqiu is making more and more trouble. Aren't you afraid that he won't be able to clean up the mess? There's nothing bad about it. The bigger the trouble, the better. If it was too quiet, it would create trouble for him. Let him get used to it, then I can leave in peace, Bai Changchun said calmly. Nongzhu was dumbfounded. She really wanted to call him a lunatic. It turned out that this old thing really let his apprentice do whatever she wanted. For the growth of his apprentice, he used the whole cultivation world as a whetstone. His mood had fluctuated too much today, and he didn't want to be agitated anymore. Nongzhu flashed outside and went to the sound transmission formation left by ancestor Nanming. After sending a message to Wenlanfeng, she quickly flew away. In the sacred land of Baiwan Nation, ancient trees covered the sky densely. In the depths of the jungle, the surface of the heart-cleansing lake was as calm as a mirror, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds. From time to time, various kinds of birds would fly past. There were many pavilions and buildings by the lake, and the morning mist curled up like smoke. It was like a fairyland on earth. This was the place where the literati of Baiwan Kingdom used to entertain their guests. Occasionally, there would be people walking back and forth between the pavilions. There were also cultivators in groups of 3 to 5 who were chatting together. From time to time, people would descend from the sky. Most of them rejected the disciples sent by the one family to attract the guests and joined the crowd of cultivators to chat. At this moment, the sound of someone flying through the air could be heard. From the sound, it didn't sound like an ordinary expert. Everyone looked up. As soon as they looked up, they saw an old man in a black robe stopping in midair. He laughed and said, "Brother Changsho, I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me." The person was Yin Baikong. Many people greeted him, but many turned their heads away in disgust. Below, there were 4 people standing on a stand that extended to the lake. Compared to other places, this stand was bigger, but there were fewer people. There was no other reason than that the 4 people below were the top 10 experts in the cultivation world. They were all experts in the late soul formation stage. Cultivators had their own circles, and it was difficult for those who were not of a high enough level to gather together. Just like in the secular world, the top figures' levels were too high, and they didn't have a common language with those of a lower level. Small figures couldn't afford to play with them. "Yin Baikong, you're late." The gray-robed old man leaning against the railing glanced at him. This person was the lord of the Eastern Nation, the palace master of the heavenly peak cloud palace, Hu Changsho. Yin Baikong landed beside him with a string of shadows. Just as he was about to speak, someone laughed and said, "Yin Baikong, you look good." Yin Baikong turned around and glanced at the 3 people standing a few meters away. He cupped his fists indifferently and said, "Pei Fong O Yangda Chi Jiujuan, long time no see." The 3 of them looked at each other and smiled. It was a smile that harbored evil intentions. A fat man in blue slowly moved towards Yin Baikong. He was plump and round, and his face was covered in grease. He looked like a rich landlord. This person was the lord of the Thousand Joy Nation, a late soul formation stage expert, Pei Fong. He nodded solemnly and said, "It has been a long time. I heard that your grandson was kidnapped, so I wanted to meet you and tell you to restrain your grief. Who knew that you were really willing to take out 300 million high-grade spirit stones to ransom him? This Pei is very surprised." As expected of the boss behind the World Chamber of Commerce, "You're very rich." The 2 of them stood together. They were about the same height, but one was fat and the other was thin. The difference in size was too great. Yin Baikong narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Fatty Pei, you were lucky to escape last time. Do you want to fight again today?" "What do you mean by lucky to escape? Last time it was your fatty grandpa who had an urgent matter and left first. What? You want to fight again here?" Pei Fong looked around and the fat on his face shook. He clicked his tongue and said, "I don't mind, I can accompany you anytime. But this place is beautiful and it's Wenlanfeng's territory. I'm afraid you don't have the guts." "Fatty Pei, you're not afraid, do you think I am? If you dare come, I'll accept." Yin Baikong retorted. At this time, the lords of the surrounding countries were watching. Even if they were afraid of Wenlanfeng, they couldn't lose in a verbal argument in public. Otherwise they would lose face. Ouyangda and Chi Jiujuan looked at each other and slowly walked to the left and right of Pei Fong. The former said indifferently, "It's better to have fun together than to have fun alone. If you 2 don't mind, let us join in." "That's right." Chi Jiujuan, who was wearing a golden robe, agreed. He was the Lord of 9 Thais and the former was the Lord of Great Liao. Both of them were late soul formation experts and they were in the same group as Pei Fong. Their words were pleasant to the ear, and they seemed to be joining in the fun. But the surrounding people could see that their intention was obvious. They wanted to beat Yin Baikong up with 3 people. Yin Baikong laughed and turned around. "Brother Changsho, it's rare to have a fun time." His tone was meaningful. Hu Changsho, who was facing the heart-cleansing lake with his hands behind his back, said without turning his head, "Since it's a fun time, the more the merrier. Count me in." Chapter 548. Needless to say, Hu Changsho was definitely on Yin Baikong's side. Interesting. Many lords from various countries smiled lasciviously, rubbing their hands in anticipation. 5 late-stage spirit-severing experts actually wanted to fight 3 against 2 in Wenlanfeng's territory. It was definitely exciting and not to be missed. This trip was definitely worth it. Of the top 10 experts in the cultivation world, Bai Changchun and Wenlanfeng, ranked first and second, had always relied on their profound cultivation to act independently and never did things like forming a gang. The remaining 8 people were not so confident. Perhaps it was because they felt insecure, perhaps it was for common interests, or perhaps it was to resist other powerful forces. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s. Bing Qingzi, Yin Baikong, and Hu Changshu were jackals of the same tribe. Ouyangda, Qi Jiujuan, and Pei Fong were entangled together. There were also 2 others who thought their cultivation was higher than these 6. The 2 felt that they were evenly matched, so they reluctantly grouped together. These 2 might have been overconfident, thinking that no one in the world could beat them together. Back in the East Sea, they were not convinced by Changchun. At the same time, they seemed to have taken some wrong medicine and joined forces with great confidence to challenge the world's #1 expert. In the end, Bai Changchun gave the 2 of them a quick death. They no longer had the chance to be alive and kicking. They were dead. From then on, 2 of the top 10 experts were gone. Therefore, a large group of mid-stage spirit-severing experts became the candidates for the 2 vacant spots. No one was convinced by each other and felt that they had the ability to be ranked among the top 10 experts. Sometimes, this kind of false reputation could also drive people crazy. For this false reputation there would be endless friction. Once these 5 people started fighting, 1 or 2 of the top 10 experts would die. Wouldn't that mean that there would be 1 or 2 vacancies? It would be best if they could infuriate Wen Lanfeng and kill 1 or 2 of them. That would be even better. Everyone looked at the 5 of them expectantly. Hu Changshu silently stood beside Yin Baikong. The 2 stood calmly and a faintly discernible killing intent began to surge. The 3 people opposite them looked at each other and revealed a cold smile. 3 against 2, this kind of opportunity was rare. The fat on Pei Fong's face trembled as he said, "Should we wait for Bing Qingzi to come? Otherwise he will say that we are bullying with numbers." "Wait for Bing Qingzi? Aren't you afraid of biting your own tongue?" Yin Baikong sneered, "I heard that you, Fatty Pei, have escaped death more than 10 times in the hands of Bing Qingzi. Aren't you afraid that you won't have another chance to escape this time?" Hu Changshu said indifferently, "It escaped from me 5 times. Yin Baikong stared blankly for a moment before replying, "It's the same. I have 5 times with me." The 2 of them stared blankly for a moment before looking at Pei Fong with disdain. Whispers immediately rang out in the surroundings. Normally, it was impossible for them to fight against soul formation final stage experts. Who would have thought that there would be such a powerful person among them? Pei Fong glanced around proudly. He did not feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he had an expression that said, "What do you guys know? Don't talk nonsense. If you have the ability, don't say it." Qi Jiujuan snorted coldly and shot into the air. Pei Fong held his belly and laughed. Then he and Ouyangda flashed into the air at the same time. The 3 of them looked down. A thick and forceful aura filled the air. Yin Baikong squinted his eyes and stared at the sky. He smiled evilly and said, "Brother Changshu, I'll leave the damn fatty to you. Don't let him escape again. I'll handle the other 2. Hu Changshu replied with action. He teleported into the air and stood opposite Pei Fong expressionlessly. Yin Baikong followed closely behind. The 5 of them were filled with killing intent. The intense killing intent frightened the birds and beasts in the forest and caused them to flee. The people below were also on standby. This battle could be considered as the pinnacle battle of the cultivation world. A battle between soul formation final stage experts was not child's play. Even the slightest ripple could cause a lot of trouble. The spectators had to be prepared to dodge at any time. Bing Qingzi, who was supposed to be part of the battle, was currently in a desolate mountain not far from Baiwan Nation's sacred land. The small hillside was overgrown with weeds. On a protruding blue stone, Bing Qingzi, whose hair and beard were all white, stood quietly. A light breeze blew against his thin white robe. Apart from his face, his entire body seemed to be completely white. Man Hu and his brothers were obediently standing at the side. Yan Zhuixing quickly sized up the old man in front of him. This was the first time he had seen a legendary soul formation stage expert. Furthermore, it was an expert at the late-stage soul formation stage. Even if he had a heart of stone, he could not help but feel slightly nervous. Bing Qingzi, who was looking down from above, was also sizing up this genius who cultivated the demonic book. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was sighing in his heart. Countless people had died. Finally, there was hope to break a curse that had bound many people for generations. His cultivation was not low among the top 10 experts. However, he had wasted too much energy in order to find someone who could form a demonic body and cultivate the demonic book. As a result, Yin Baikong, whose cultivation was slightly lower than his, had taught 2 soul formation stage disciples. However, he did not have a single disciple under his name. His cultivation was not low, but he was the weakest among the top 10 experts. Even many soul formation middle stage experts were stronger than him. It was not easy for him to find the time to teach 7 disciples who were at the tribulation final stage. He treated each of them as if they were his own children. However, one of them died because of the demonic book's inheritor. It really made his heart ache. Activating the demonic art, he calmed down his slightly nervous state of mind. Yan Zhuixing bowed and said, Junior Yan Zhuixing greets Senior Bing. I have always been indebted to Senior's kindness, but I did not have the chance to meet you. It is my great fortune to be able to meet Senior today. No need to be so courteous. Bing Qingzi raised his hand and sighed, I don't deserve it. Why did it sound like he was mocking someone? Yan Zhuixing was slightly startled and said, Senior, do you have any opinions about me? If you do, you can say it directly. I will definitely follow your instructions and will not have any opinions. Bing Qingzi glanced at Man Hu. Obviously, his disciple did not tell the truth to Yan Zhuixing. He paused for a while and said, This is for later. I will find an opportunity to tell you the truth. Man Hu has already told me your purpose of coming. Before he finished his words, he suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the Wen family's sacred ground. Seeing his solemn expression, the others did not know what had happened and followed his gaze. Looking left and right, they did not find anything. After a while, they felt that there was a slight abnormal fluctuation in the air, and then they saw flocks of birds flying over from afar. Master, is there something wrong? Man Hu asked. It's the breath of those old guys. What the hell are they doing? Are they going to fight in the Wen family's sacred ground? Bing Qingzi frowned and quickly flew away without saying anything to them. For him, this distance was just a few blinks of an eye. In the sky above the heart-cleansing lake, when the situation was on the verge of breaking out, a flying sound was approaching rapidly. The spectators secretly clicked their tongues. Needless to say, the last person of the 2 groups of rivals had also arrived. Among the remaining 8 top experts in the cultivation world, only Bai Changchun and Wen Lanfeng were left. The rest were all here. Pei Fong and the other 2 people's faces changed slightly. They all understood that if it was really 3 against 3, they might still be a little weaker. Yin Baikong and Hu Changsho looked at each other. The former turned back and sneered, Fatty Hu, aren't you waiting for Bing Qingzi? As you wish, Bing Qingzi is here. I hope you can be tough today and don't run away with your tail between your legs. Your escaping skills are unparalleled in the world. I really can't catch up with you. Hu Changsho said indifferently, 1 ran away but there are still 2 left. Good. As he spoke, a white shadow flashed by. Bing Qingzi, who was covered in snow from head to toe, suddenly appeared in the sky. Bing Qingzi glanced at them and said in a deep voice, What's going on? Yin Baikong looked at Pei Fong and said with a smile, Bing Qingzi, you came at the right time. We didn't recruit anyone, but someone actually provoked us first. Fatty Pei specifically said that he was waiting for you to settle the score. Settle the score with me? Bing Qingzi was slightly startled and looked at Hu Changsho with an inquiring look. The latter said indifferently, Yes, everyone below heard it. Bing Qingzi stared at Pei Fong and said in a deep voice, Fatty Pei, you stole my spirit beast from the snowy mountain last time. It's already good enough that I didn't settle the score with you, but you actually want to settle the score with me? Pei Fong was speechless. Although he called out Bing Qingzi's name, he didn't mean to settle the score with him. Yin Baikong and Hu Changsho were obviously playing tricks on him. However, explaining now would make him seem afraid of trouble. He immediately said with his fat face shaking, Bing Qingzi, don't accuse me wrongly. When did I go to the snowy mountain to steal your spirit beast? You think I can't recognize you just because you're wrapped in white? Bing Qingzi snorted coldly, My mysterious Yin palm doesn't feel good, does it? Ouyangda and Qi Jujuan turned to look at Fatty. The latter frowned and said, You went to steal from others again? The 2 of them had been implicated countless times because of this guy's stealing. Allying with this guy was really bad luck. The most depressing thing was that this guy liked to steal from experts, especially from the 3 of them. But then again, the more powerful an expert's item, the more valuable it was. There were only a few top experts in the cultivation world. He didn't dare to steal from those that were too powerful. What are you talking about? Pei Fong patted his chest and said excitedly, Don't tell me you don't believe me but believe them? Dizzy. With your figure it's hard to mistake you. Yin Baikong glanced at his chubby figure and sneered, You're a famous thief. It's not the first time you visited my God of Wealth peak. It's a disgrace to be on the same level as you among the top 10 experts. Pei Fong had a bellyful of anger when he talked about stealing from the God of Wealth peak. The last time he snuck into the God of Wealth Peak, he only stole a tightly sealed broken box and was discovered by Yin Baikong. He didn't know what kind of valuable treasure was hidden inside, but it provoked Yin Baikong to chase after him for a few days and nights, causing him to be covered in injuries and almost lose his life. In the end, he had no choice but to throw away the broken chest and escape. It was because of this that he took the initiative to provoke Yin Baikong. Thinking of the injuries that took a long time to heal, Pei Fong was enraged and shouted, "Yin Baikong, don't confuse right and wrong here. If you want to fight, then bring it on. Don't think of leaving here alive today." Yin Baikong sneered. He was eager to use this opportunity to get rid of one or two troublesome fellows. "Yin Baikong, I haven't seen you for many years. You're getting more and more arrogant. Do you think this is your world commerce? Do you think you can call the shots here?" A faint voice reverberated in the surroundings. Then the voice became louder and louder. Although it was soft, it became somewhat deafening in the end. The calm surface of the heart-cleansing lake was shaken by the continuous sound, and it lost its calmness. The leaves of the surrounding trees were also shaking non-stop. Such a profound cultivation. Everyone was shocked. They looked around but couldn't find where the voice came from. Although they couldn't see who was speaking, they knew it was Wen Lanfeng from the voice. The expressions of the 6 late-stage soul formation cultivators changed. They weren't strangers to Wen Lanfeng. Just from this voice, they could tell that Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was far stronger than before. No wonder he dared to go to the demon domain to find Bai Changchun. In the ghost manor, Yu Qianqiu had already moved out of the small courtyard. He didn't move outside the ghost manor, but to the main courtyard of the ghost manor. Under Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing's inquiry, the group of rogue cultivators who originally occupied the main courtyard happily gave up their territory. Since Senior Niu wanted to live here, no one dared to say anything. The ghost manor was no longer the world of rogue cultivators. Cultivators from various countries had gathered here. Although there were many people, no one dared to cause trouble. After all, they had been warned by their sects before coming here. Everyone's purpose in coming here was naturally to find Niu Yud. At the arched entrance of the main courtyard, Qin Jiaxing stood there like a door god. He looked at the group of people in front of him and said indifferently, "Come one by one. Don't rush. You can only enter if you pay." A large group of late-stage tribulation passing experts stared at Qin Jiaxing, who was guarding the entrance. A mere early-stage tribulation passing expert actually dared to block their way. However, they couldn't do anything about it. Who told them to ask for help? Moreover, the people guarding the entrance were the mysterious Niu Yud subordinates. To be honest, when Qin Jiaxing first faced so many late-stage tribulation passing experts, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid. He was so scared that his legs and stomach turned to jelly. But now, a person angrily strode out. Qin Jiaxing pointed at the nose of a late-stage tribulation passing cultivator and said coldly, "It's your turn." The person stared at Qin Jiaxing and sneered, waiting to see what would happen. Gritting his teeth, he took out a storage bag and stuffed it into the person's hand. Just as he was about to rush inside, Qin Jiaxing grabbed him. "Wait!" The person shouted, "Let go!" He wanted to kill Qin Jiaxing on the spot. Yes. 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Not a bad amount. After Qin Jiaxing injected his divine sense into the bag, he let go of the person, waved his hand and said, "You can go in." You. The person was so angry that he clenched his fists and the bones in his body made cracking sounds. Qin Jiaxing coldly snorted and said expressionlessly, "Senior Niu's time is very precious. If you don't want to go in, then please get out of the way. There are people waiting behind you. However, you should know the rules, right? The money you received is not refundable." Chapter 549. That person flicked his sleeves and entered with a muffled sound. "Young man, be more polite with your words. Don't be too ruthless and leave some leeway for us to meet in the future." The one who said this was none other than Guan Zhangkai, who had a huge battle with Yu Qianqiu. He was originally in charge of the World Commerce Association's branch in Gold Casting City. After his master Sikongju arrived, he was sent over to invite Niu Yud. Because of Ghost Village's one-armed elder, it was inconvenient for a soul formation expert to personally come, so Sikongju could only let his disciple go first. What made Guan Zhangkai depressed was that many people from various countries came to invite Niu Yud, but Niu Yud refused to come out of Ghost Village. Those who wanted to see him had to line up. This ostentatious display was really not bad. The most infuriating thing was that Niu Yud actually raised the price. Those who wanted to see him had to pay a meeting fee of 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, otherwise he wouldn't see them. This was simply looting a burning house. If it wasn't for Ghost Village's one-armed elder having enough face and Niu Yid's unfathomable cultivation, Ghost Village would definitely be trampled to the ground today. Guan Zhongkai waited for half a day and saw this gatekeeper's arrogance and rudeness. Now that it was his turn and he was so close, he couldn't help but warn him. Leave some leeway? There's such a saying in the cultivation world? Qin Jiaxing stood on the steps and glanced at him condescendingly. When I was acting like a grandson in the past, I was polite to everyone, but I didn't see anyone leave me any leeway. They still didn't treat you as a human. Furthermore, I didn't go all out, I was just following Senior Niu's instructions and doing official business. Alright. Cut the crap and see if you have enough money in your pockets. If not, then move aside and don't affect others. You. Guan Zhongkai had the urge to go berserk and hit someone. A purple-clothed person behind him pulled him back and sighed, "Brother Guan, why bother with him? He's just a petty person intoxicated by success. There's still a long way to go." This person was Yu Lan Du, who had been hanging out with Guan Zhongkai for a long time. When he said this, his tone was long and he even pulled Guan Zhongkai towards the one-armed elder pruning branches at the side of the wall. He seemed to be telling Guan Zhongkai to endure it for now and find a chance to deal with this dog who relied on his master's power. Threat? If I follow boss closely, I won't be afraid no matter where I go. Qin Jiaxing stood there carelessly, still looking down on everyone else. He felt great in his heart. In his entire life, he had never dreamed that there would be a day where he would be able to dictate everything to a few hundred experts at the end of the Tribulation Transcendence stage. He had caused them to lose their temper and become obedient in front of him. Whether or not he would be retaliated against in the future was a matter for the future. In short, he had such a good time in his life. Even if he died, it would be worth it. When he thought of this, Qin Jiaxing straightened his back a little more. His calm gaze slowly swept across the crowd below. His bearing was steady and graceful, and he had the demeanor of a master. If a person wasn't afraid of anything and didn't care about anything, he would naturally be strong without any desires. The rogue cultivators who were huddled in the surroundings stared at Qin Jiaxing enviously. He thought to himself, this guy has finally made a name for himself. He's so bold that he dares to order a group of experts at the final stage of the Crossing Calamity stage. I'm so envious. Not long after, the person who went in earlier came out with an ashen face. Many people asked him what was going on, but he didn't answer and quickly flew away after he went out. The group of people looked at each other. They didn't know what Niu Yu did to the people who went in. Why did none of them have a good expression when they came out? Next. Qin Jiaxing shouted in a voice that was neither loud nor soft. Guan Zhongkai gritted his teeth as he took out a storage bag and handed it over. With the previous example, he wasn't in a hurry. He waited for the arrogant guy at the door to count the spirit stones and get his permission before he strode in. The courtyard was deep and serene. After passing through the plum trees on both sides, he saw two people standing on a platform at the entrance of the main hall. The person standing to the side was expressionless, while the person facing him was staring at him with a smile. TSK. Fo, we meet again. When Yu Qianqiu saw that the person who came was actually Guan Zhongkai, he smiled even more happily. This must be Mr. Niu Yud. Guan Zhongkai didn't like this Niu Yud very much. He was the same as the guards outside and liked to look down on people. How could he greet a guest like this? However, he still forced a smile and cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu. I'm Guan Zhongkai from the World Commerce Association. I'm here to meet you. I have something to discuss with you. As he spoke, he sized up the main hall, implying that they should go in and talk. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. He turned around and slowly walked towards the main hall with his hands behind his back. Just as Guan Zhongkai went up the stairs, the person beside him interrupted and stopped him. The person said expressionlessly, "You've seen Senior Niu's face. Please go back. If you still want to talk to Senior Niu, please pay more. 200,000 superior-grade spirit stones." Guan Zhongkai was stunned. When he reacted, his expression twitched. Are you kidding me? I paid 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Just a meeting and that's it. That's right. Fu Chun didn't hide and explained cleanly. That 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones is just the meeting fee. It doesn't include the cost of the conversation. Senior Niu's time is very precious. It's already rare that he's willing to meet you for 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones. If you want to take up Senior Niu's time to chat, you naturally have to pay more. You guys must be crazy for money? 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones for just one meeting? Guan Zhongkai was furious. He felt like he had been cheated. Please calm down. Fu Chun was neither arrogant nor rash. She continued politely. This rule isn't just for you. Everyone who came in before followed it. There were no exceptions. Please forgive me. Why didn't you say so earlier? You guys are cheating people on purpose. Of course not. Fu Chun said curiously, I told everyone who went out to tell the rules here to the people outside. Didn't they say anything? That can't be, right? Guan Zhongkai was stunned. He finally understood now. No wonder everyone who went out had a bad expression. When he asked them what was wrong, none of them answered. It seemed like they had suffered a loss and didn't want others to take advantage of them, so they deliberately hid it. If it's inconvenient, please return. Senior Nyo's time is precious and he has a bad temper. If you take too long, you might attract unnecessary trouble. Fu Chun raised her hand politely to send them off. This was a blatant threat. Guan Zhongkai's face turned green and red. But what could he do? He had to bear with it. If he came here and told his master that he spent 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones and didn't even have a single conversation with Nyo Yud, he would be scolded to death by his master. What he was most afraid of was that he couldn't see through Nyo Yud's cultivation. It was obviously higher than his. Even if he wanted to lose his temper, he had to consider the consequences. 200,000 high-grade spirit stones for a simple conversation. Isn't it a little too expensive? Guan Zhongkai was clearly admitting defeat since he could say such words. He had no choice. Money was a small matter. He wasn't spending his own money. The key was to complete the task his master gave him. How aggrieved. No. 200,000 isn't expensive at all. Fu Chun waved her hand and said, Senior Nyo said that his value is the lowest and very fair. If it was the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun, who wants to meet him, I'm afraid that even if you spend 100 million superior-grade spirit stones, he might not even meet you, let alone chat with him. How can this be compared? Guan Zhongkai almost choked to death. What kind of person was Bai Changchun? He couldn't be measured with money. Moreover, he wouldn't do such a vulgar thing. As long as he asked, people would give him money. Why can't it be compared? Everyone has a value. Fu Chun counted with her fingers, wanting to reason with him. Guan Zhongkai felt his scalp go numb. He quickly raised his hand and said, all right. You don't have to say any more. I admit defeat. 200,000, right? I'll give it to you. It took half a day to queue up. Master was still waiting in Gold Casting City. If this continued, how long would Master have to wait? Guan Zhongkai quickly rummaged through his storage bag and took out 200,000 superior-grade spirit stones. He stuffed them into Fu Chun's hands and said helplessly, count them. Fu Chun counted expressionlessly. She had become numb from counting money. She had long lost the excitement she had in the beginning. Boss's prepared excuses were used one after another. Today she had finally seen it. In the past, she would fight over a piece of superior-grade spirit stone. Now it was like child's play. This was called earning money. But then again, Boss was probably the only one who dared to play like this in the cultivation world. Please. Fu Chun kept the storage bag and respectfully led the way. This service attitude finally made Guan Zhongkai feel a little better in his heart. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he sat at the coffee table in the main hall. He held a cup of tea and took a sip. His eyes were focused on the clear tea in the cup. Fu Chun led him to his side and pointed to an empty seat on the other side of the coffee table. He said to Guan Zhongkai, please take a seat. The price to pay to speak to Mr. isn't small. Guan Zhongkai sat down and said sarcastically. Yu Qianqiu smiled and didn't reply. Guan Zhongkai frowned and said, don't tell me you want to collect money again? Please wait. Fu Chun said politely. He took out a transparent hourglass from his storage bag. It looked like it was carved from a single piece of crystal. It wasn't big and looked small. The design was not bad. Fu Chun placed the hourglass upside down on the coffee table. After the sound of flowing sand could be heard, he quietly retreated to the side. Guan Zhongkai pointed at the hourglass and said in surprise, what does this mean? Are you going to collect money by the hour? Begin. Yu Qianqiu laughed and finally spoke. He placed the teacup on the table and pointed at the hourglass. You're talking about this? There are too many people looking for me. I have no choice but to do this. Otherwise they would come and talk to me for half a day. When will it end? I'm a soft-hearted person. I can't refuse to see people looking for me. So, I can only set some harsh conditions. Please excuse me, haha. Chapter 550. You're soft-hearted? I think you're more like black-hearted. My Grandmaster Yin Baikong is famous for doing business in the cultivation world, but he's never done it like you. Guan Zhongkai held back his words forcefully and didn't say it out loud. He pointed at the hourglass unhappily and said, "Looks like I'm not wrong, you charge by the hour." "Look at your words, you're exaggerating." Yu Qianqiu smiled. "There's nothing wrong with the hour, but you've already paid 200,000 for the conversation. I won't charge you for the rest of the time." Hearing this, Guan Zhongkai's slightly leaning body relaxed and he heaved a sigh of relief. But he was still cursing in his heart. What's the difference between paying 200,000 high-grade spirit stones in a single hour and robbery? No, it's even easier than robbery. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and saw his sullen face. He knew he was probably scolding him. This was within his expectations. If he couldn't hear it, then pretend he didn't know. What could he do? He coughed and said seriously, "That Guan? What's your name again?" Guan Zhongkai had just gathered his energy and was ready to talk about business, but his face darkened again when he heard this. He had just announced his name and the other party had forgotten about it. Clearly he didn't care about him at all. Usually he relied on his position as Yin Baikong's first disciple to be arrogant in the cultivation world. When had he ever been ignored like this? Actually, he didn't care about Niu Yid at all. Although he knew that Niu Yid might be a soul-forming master, he could tell from the way he addressed him and his actions that he didn't care about it at all. Who knew that the other party was even more blatant about his disregard? Helplessly, he held his breath and said in a low voice, "Guan Zhongkai." "Guan Zhongkai, I've heard of you, I've heard of you." Yu Qianqiu had a look of realization. He nodded and said, "I heard that you're in charge of Gold Casting City and brought a lot of spirit stones to place a bounty on Yu Qianqiu's head. Is this true?" "I'm just following orders." Guan Zhongkai wasn't here to talk about this. He casually said, "Mister, you're also concerned about this?" "Of course I'm concerned. I heard the bounty is 100 million high-grade spirit stones." Yu Qianqiu paused and explained embarrassedly, "It's not for the spirit stones, I just know Yu Qianqiu. It would be strange if it wasn't for the spirit stones. If it wasn't for the spirit stones, would you be so shameless as to do this?" Guan Zhongkai casually replied with an "oh," and glanced at the slippery sand in the hourglass. He changed the topic and said, "I came to find you because I have something important to discuss with you." He changed the topic, but Yu Qianqiu continued talking about himself. Guan Zhongkai's eyes lit up as he suddenly thought of something. He seemed to have received news that Niu Yid said that Xan Laosan had brought Yu Qianqiu to visit him. If that was the case, then Niu Yid might really be able to contact Yu Qianqiu. Guan Zhongkai gnashed his teeth as he thought of Yu Qianqiu. Admitting defeat in front of everyone last time was too embarrassing. If he wasn't Master's chief disciple and Master was a person who stood above tens of thousands of people in the World Chamber of Commerce, he would have ended up in a miserable state. Even so, when he returned, Master Sikongju was so angry that he almost killed him. After a round of cursing, he was severely punished, causing him to almost be unable to lift his head in the World Chamber of Commerce. This time, Master still gave him a chance to redeem himself by performing meritorious deeds. This hatred would never end. After a moment of silence, Guan Zhongkai's eyes flickered as he said, "From Mister's tone, it seems that Mister has a way to capture Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu inadvertently glanced at the hourglass that had more than half of the fine sand leaking out. He coughed and said, "Insignificant Yu Qianqiu, haha. Let's get back to business. Honestly, if I can capture Yu Qianqiu, how much money will you give me?" "Yu Qianqiu is hiding in the fog forest. You really have a way to capture him?" Guan Zhongkai asked in disbelief. Even Fu Chun, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu a few times. This fog forest wasn't a place that anyone could enter. However, with Boss' unfathomable abilities, it really wasn't clear. "This isn't something you should worry about." Yu Qianqiu raised his teacup and took a small sip. He slowly said, "The key is whether the price can move me." Guan Zhongkai suddenly stood up and muttered, "This?" He slowly paced around the hall in deep thought. Even though world commerce was very rich and his position in world commerce wasn't low, the maximum amount of spirit stones he could use was at most 100 million. This was also the authority to use it in emergencies. Yu Qianqiu wasn't in a hurry and let him think slowly. He held his teacup and occasionally looked at the hourglass. It seemed that Fu Chun's gaze was also sweeping over the hourglass. After a while, Guan Zhongkai's expression returned to normal and he sat back down in his chair. He put on the face of a merchant negotiating and asked, "How much do you want? Name a price. We can discuss it." He looked calm on the surface but he was secretly excited. Looking at Niu Yid's appearance, he might really have a way to capture Yu Qianqiu. If it was true, then this trip was worth it. He had resolved two major matters for world commerce in one go. This merit was more than enough for him to wipe away his previous shame. Most importantly, he could capture Yu Qianqiu to vent his anger. This face tsk. As expected of someone from world commerce. Yu Qianqiu was delighted and placed his teacup back on the table. He shook his sleeves and pushed out his palms, revealing all 10 of his fingers, 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. 1 billion? Guan Zhongkai was stunned and then sneered, "Mr. Niu, you must be joking. Is that trash Yu Qianqiu worth this price? It's too high, this is impossible. Your grandma is the trash, your father's net worth, F***K priceless." Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He had just wanted to discuss the price of his capture with someone else and was secretly happy. He didn't expect to suffer a loss in the blink of an eye. Since it's impossible, then there's nothing more to say. Yu Qianqiu added with some pent-up anger, "Everyone knows the value of the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch's treasure. Yu Qianqiu is a priceless treasure. A fixed price of 1 billion, not a single spirit stone less. If you want to take advantage, tell your world commerce to find someone who has the ability to capture Yu Qianqiu." He thought to himself, "You dare to call me trash in front of me? Bastard, just wait and see. One day I'll chop you into a pile of trash and feed you to the dogs." Guan Zhongkai was stunned. He didn't know why he was angry at Yu Qianqiu. This person clearly had the face of doing business, but why was he so impatient when it came to discussing the price? No wonder he could only make such a shameless profit. He smiled and said, "Mister, why are you in such a hurry? We can slowly discuss the price." "I have to be in a hurry. I'm thinking for you." Yu Qianqiu knocked on the table expressionlessly, then pointed at the hourglass. He waved at Fu Chun and said, "Send the guest out." You." Guan Zhongkai almost choked to death. He stared at the hourglass and stuttered for a while, not knowing what to say. He wasn't a fool. Of course, he knew what it meant when the hourglass timer ended. Fu Chun, who was at the side, was stunned when she heard the two of them talking about 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. Even though he had broadened his horizons in the past few days, he still couldn't accept such a huge number. What kind of concept was 1 billion high-grade spirit stones? After being roused by his boss's words, he took a deep breath and walked to Guan Zhongkai's side. He raised his hand towards the door and said, "Please." Wait. Guan Zhongkai couldn't take it anymore. How could he just leave like this? After talking for half a day, they didn't talk about anything practical and had spent 300,000 spirit stones. How was he going to explain when he returned? Even the world commerce's chief disciple's grand disciple couldn't be this wasteful, right? Did he still want to work in the future? "Mr. Guan, everyone abides by the rules. You can't be the only exception, right? If this matter gets out, Senior Niu will really be embarrassed. Please go back." Fu Chun raised his hand again to send the guest off. A ghost dared to brazenly blacken others. This wasn't something a normal person would do. Guan Zhongkai really wanted to curse, but he still cupped his hands towards Fu Chun and said, "Little brother, please wait a moment. Allow me to say a few more words." He had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. "Please?" Fu Chun's tone became stiff. He really didn't give any face. Anyway, with his boss at the side supporting him, he wasn't afraid at all. Wasn't it just a tribulation late-stage cultivator? There were still a lot of people outside waiting to see him. "Don't pull and pull." Guan Zhongkai pushed Fu Chun's hand away gloomily. He anxiously shouted at Yu Qianqiu, "Mr. Niu, please listen to me say a few more words." Yu Qianqiu snorted and glanced at him. He picked up his tea and ignored him. Damn it. He dared to call me a bastard. Senior Niu, I really have something important to discuss with you." Guan Zhongkai finally stopped putting on airs and changed the way he addressed Mr. Niu. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Not to mention that he might not be a match for Mr. Niu, The key point was that he couldn't report back. Mr. Guan, you're not the only one who has something important to discuss with Senior Niu. Everyone said so. But rules are rules. Please. Fu Chun sent the guest off for the third time. I'm different from them. That's not right. Guan Zhangkai was startled and said with a face full of suspicion, I've been here for less than an hour. It seems like every one of them has been here for more than an hour. Could it be that Senior Niu is favoring one and discriminating against the others? Could it be that you don't like the people of world commerce? It's true that the people of world commerce are rich and envious. Yu Qianqiu continued to drink his tea. Without a word, Fu Chun lifted the lid of the teacup, indicating for him to explain. He really treasured his words like gold. Fu Chun sighed inwardly. Why was he rushing to be ripped off? He had already explained the same words to different people over a dozen times, right? Mr. Guan, you've really misunderstood Senior Niu. Fu Chun sighed and said, Actually, it's for your own good. It's mainly to help you save money. So that you won't be unhappy after spending money. Save money for me? Guan Zhangkai had an expression that said the sun rose from the west. He asked in a neutral tone, What do you mean by that? I want to hear how it's for my own good. Chapter 551. Fu Chun looked at the boss who had a teasing expression and said bluntly, Let me put it this way. The person before you also had 1 hour of talking time, but that person felt that talking to Senior Niu wasn't satisfying enough, so he paid for another hour of talking time. You see, if you also didn't feel satisfied enough, wouldn't you also have to pay for another hour of talking time? Isn't this saving you money and doing it for your own good? Yu Qianqiu was amused when he heard this, but felt that something was wrong. He gulped down a mouthful of tea and remained expressionless. Guan Zhangkai turned to look at Yu Qianqiu, then at Fu Chun in front of him. The muscles on his face twitched non-stop. He really wanted to kill this guy who was speaking so seriously. He felt that this kid was even more despicable than Yo Yid. He looked sincere but was actually treacherous. You mean that if I talk to Senior Niu again, I need to spend more money and add another hour of time? Guan Zhangkai's tone was slightly cold. As a member of the World Commerce Association who did business with the world, he had seen black-hearted profiteers, but he had never seen such a black-hearted one. Senior Niu, time is precious. Don't talk about such meaningless things. Fu Chun sighed and said, Mr. Guan, why do you need to spend this money? I'm really doing it for your own good so that I won't offend you for no reason. You should go back. There are still many people waiting behind you. I'll send you off. Yu Qianqiu looked at Fu Chun with satisfaction. Look at his eyesight. He had picked out a talent at first glance. She was truly someone of his generation. Only this kind of talent had a future in the cultivation world. It seemed that old fart Nongzhu was also like this. But look at how well he was doing. He was so envious of him. Fu Chun. Well done. These fellows from the big sects are all lowly people. They need to be taught a lesson. Go ahead and do it. I'll support everything. This boss specializes in taking care of these fellows who have their eyes on top of their heads. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and transmitted his voice. Guan Zhangkai's expression really darkened. Go back? What a joke. He wasn't Master's biological son. How could he allow himself to make a fool of himself again and again? Was there still a way out now? He finally understood why those people who had gone out earlier had such dark expressions on their faces. I'll endure. Guan Zhangkai heaved a long sigh and without saying a word, he took out another bag of spirit stones from his storage bag and handed it to Fu Chun, saying, By another round of time, 200,000 upper-grade spirit stones, count them clearly for me. Mr. Guan, why are you doing this? Senior Niu said that he really doesn't want to earn money that goes against his conscience. Fu Chun gently pushed back. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Once upon a time he would never be able to talk to a tribulation-passing realm expert of a famous sect like this. This bunch of arrogant fellows. Not to mention looking at them, they simply treated them like weeds. If they wanted to kill them they could do so with a wave of their hands. How many loose cultivators' bones were still silently crying in the wilderness? How many rogue cultivators had been forced into a state worse than pigs and dogs? Now that he had this opportunity and his boss had spoken up to support him, he would be letting himself down if he didn't do his best. Boss was right, a bunch of sluts. Guan Zhangkai handed the storage bag over again and said word by word, I did it voluntarily. The sentence made him want to cry. Was it really voluntary? It was 2F** king not voluntary, but there was really no other way. Unexpectedly, Fu Chun pushed the storage bag back and said in an embarrassed tone, Aren't you making things difficult for me? He offered 400,000 upper-grade spirit stones for the second round of time, and you only offered 200,000. If it's so little, who am I going to ask for it from? I can't afford it myself. 400,000? Guan Zhongkai suppressed his anger and said, it was only 200,000 for the first round of time just now, why did it double in an instant? Mr. Guan, it's really not just for you. Everyone is like this. The rules were set by Senior Niu. Fu Chun said helplessly. Guan Zhongkai glanced at Yu Qianqiu, then turned back and laughed angrily. You don't even have a reason to raise the price just like that, aren't you guys going too far? Mr. Guan, you can't say that. Fu Chun explained solemnly, look, just the time you're wasting Senior Niu's time is enough for 2 more people to come in and meet Senior Niu. Then the meeting fee would be 200,000, and if you buy the second round of time, it would also be 200,000. Together, 400,000 is just right. Besides, no one is forcing you. If you're not willing, you can leave. I've already advised you to go back, but you? Brat, you're messing with me. Guan Zhongkai finally couldn't take it anymore and grabbed Fu Chun's clothes by his chest. His master was an early-stage soul formation expert, and his grandmaster was a late-stage soul formation expert. Furthermore, he was the chief disciple of the World Chamber of Commerce, the most powerful organization in the cultivation world. When had he ever suffered such a loss? Fu Chun looked at Yu Qianqiu with slight panic. After all, he had been suppressed by the despotic power of the large sects for too long, so he couldn't help but feel subconsciously afraid. Once someone made a move, he would more or less be a little afraid. Oh, today you're the first to dare touch my people in front of me. The people from the World Chamber of Commerce are really something. The teacup in Yu Qianqiu's hand heavily slammed onto the tea table. With a cold humph, the terrifying aura contained within the black fire in his body instantly surged out. The temperature in the hall instantly dropped to freezing point. A boundless and ferocious icy aura instantly enveloped Guan Zhongkai's body. Despair, death, indifference and all sorts of extremely negative emotions made Guan Zhongkai feel as if he had suffered a heavy blow. His face instantly turned pale and he let go of Fu Chun in a panic. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a face full of fear and stammered, "Say, Senior, please calm down, there's something we can talk about." The taste of despair in the icy aura made it almost impossible for him to have any thoughts of resisting. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu was sitting there like the god of death from hell was staring at him. Fu Chun quivered and took a few steps back, breaking away from the heart-palpitating aura on Guan Zhongkai's body. He turned pale with fright as he looked at Boss. When he was grabbed by Guan Zhongkai, he felt that the terrifying aura that suddenly enveloped Guan Zhongkai's body came from Boss. It was a terrifying aura that made one's soul tremble with fear. Although that terrifying aura wasn't targeted at him, Fu Chun didn't doubt that this aura alone could kill him. It was too terrifying. For the first time, Fu Chun looked at Yu Qianqiu with an expression of extreme reverence. She didn't know how high this boss's cultivation was. The abilities that he revealed were more and more frightening each time. Now you know there's something to talk about? Yu Qianqiu made an exception and spoke without asking for money. However, this wasn't a good thing for Guan Zhongkai. He said in an abnormally cold tone, "You dare to touch my people in front of me, are you tired of living?" Just this sentence caused Fu Chun's eyes to slightly redden. It felt so good to have someone to protect and support her. Ever since she stepped into the cultivation world, she had never heard such heartwarming words. They were better than anything else. Misunderstanding, Senior. Misunderstanding. Guan Zhongkai stood there trembling. He wanted to teleport away from that terrifying aura, but he found that the true essence in his body seemed to have frozen. The netherworld ghost fire that could separate the human world and the netherworld was no joke. It was the rolling black fire that burned between the human and ghost worlds. It was a symbol of life and death for humans and ghosts. It should be known that even with Bai Changchun's cultivation, he couldn't cross the netherworld fire sea, so its power could be imagined. When Yu Qianqiu was still in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, he could control the black fire's aura to deal with Ze, who was in the late stage of the tribulation passing stage. Now that his cultivation had soared to the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage, his ability to control the black fire's aura was not just a little bit better. After his aura locked onto Guan Zhongkai, he could sense his every move. He could increase the pressure at any time to prevent him from escaping, and he wouldn't be as careless as when he tortured Ze, causing her to faint on the spot. Of course, if Guan Zhongkai escaped before Yu Qianqiu's aura locked onto him, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be able to do anything to him. After all, There was a huge difference in cultivation between the two of them. He wouldn't be able to catch up even if he wanted to. The key was that he was locked onto due to a moment of carelessness. Want to run? With his cultivation it would be very difficult. If Yu Qianqiu wanted him dead now, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Misunderstanding? I think you're used to being arrogant. Yu Qianqiu coldly snorted, don't think that the world commerce is that great. There are some people and some things that your world commerce can't afford to offend. Do you believe that even if I kill you now, Yin Baikong won't be able to do anything to me? To be honest, with the new and old hatred, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to kill him now. But for the sake of long-term plans he had to let him live for the time being. I believe you. Guan Zhongkai heard a glimmer of hope in his words and hurriedly grabbed onto it. Senior, please be magnanimous. He had completely given in. Magnanimous? This hand of mine is really expensive, and it's not just an ordinary kind of expensive. Also, Yu Qianqiu's face was cold and unyielding with killing intent. He didn't mean to scare him, but he did it on purpose. He slowly said, you should have known when you entered this door that my words are precious. Being forced by you to make an exception, hee. You tell me how you want to settle this debt. Junior is willing to offer 1 million high-grade spirit stones as an apology to Senior. Guan Zhongkai hurriedly followed up. He was now 100% sure that this Nyoyud was a soul formation expert because the aura he emitted was too terrifying. He could actually control him to the point where he couldn't run even if he wanted to. Even his own master couldn't do that. Just this powerful aura alone was so powerful, what would happen if they fought? So he didn't feel wronged calling him Junior at all. 1 million? Isn't your life a little too cheap? Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted, do you want money or your life? Damn it. Damn it. Guan Zhongkai was already forcing himself to stand up. The sudden shout almost scared him to the point of kneeling down. He trembled and said, Senior, how much do you want? How much do I want? I'm afraid you can't afford what I want. Yu Qianqiu gently crossed his legs and pointed at the storage bag on his waist. I won't make things difficult for you, lest I say that you're bullying a junior. I've always been a kind person and not a greedy person. I don't want more, just take as much as you have in this storage bag. Chapter 552. The main hall quietened down. Guan Zhongkai stood there dumbfounded and speechless, his face ashen. It wasn't that he didn't have money in his storage bag, there was more than 100 million. That 100 million was the reward for capturing Yu Qianqiu from the Chamber of Commerce. It wasn't his personal money, so how could he give it to him for his own use? The consequence of using it up was that he wouldn't be able to explain himself. He was filled with regret. He regretted not holding back just now. It was just a few irritating words. Why did he have to make a move? Now that he thought about it, it might really have something to do with him acting like a big boss outside. Now that he had finally met a tough opponent. Senior Nyo. Guan Zhongkai begged in despair, I do have a lot of spirit stones in my storage bag, but that's the Chamber of Commerce's money. If I give it all to you, it's no different from killing me. It's better. He didn't say, it's better to kill me now in the end. He didn't doubt that this Nyoyud was a good person. In the cultivation world, someone who dared to call out his grandmaster Yin Baikong by name wouldn't care about the life and death of a tribulation passing stage cultivator. Moreover, from this person's actions, he wasn't just a normal person. Normal people wouldn't dare to brazenly extort people from other countries. As expected, Yu Qianqiu snorted with a faint smile, don't talk about the Chamber of Commerce in front of me. That's not something I care about. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. After I kill you, the money in your storage bag will still be mine. Who knows, there might be some other valuable things. Yu Qianqiu suddenly stood up. Guan Zhongkai hurriedly begged for mercy. I'll give it. Senior, please don't be angry. I'll give it to you. Without another word, he quickly rummaged through the storage bag for spirit stones. Then he took out another storage bag and handed it over with both hands. Yu Qianqiu grabbed it and scanned it with his divine sense. After a rough estimate, he estimated that there were about 105 million high-grade spirit stones. He weighed the bag in his hand and said, It's all here? You're not hiding anything, are you? She slowly walked to his side. Guan Zhongkai was shocked and scared witless. He thought that Miaoyi was going to go back on his word after taking the money. He knelt down on the ground and said fearfully, Senior Nyo, you are a senior expert, you can't go back on your word. I didn't even leave a single spirit stone. If you don't believe me, I can swear to the heavens. You can take it for examination. He hurriedly untied the storage pouch on his waist, indicating that he was willing to be examined. Fu Chun, who was standing to the side, shook her head slightly. It turned out that the so-called experts at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage were nothing more than this. They were usually arrogant because they had never met anyone powerful. Actually, in the end he was no different from an ordinary person. Look at how he was wagging his tail and begging for pity. He was still so unbearable. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously wanted to take his storage bag and take a look. He stretched out his hand, but halfway through he waved it away and laughed. Look at what you're saying. If I didn't trust you, would I let you take the initiative? I'm not that narrow-minded. Get up. The cold and terrifying aura that enveloped Guan Zhongkai's body instantly disappeared. Guan Zhongkai slowly stood up as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He cupped his hands with a miserable expression and said, "Junior will take his leave." Wait. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at him. Although he was now free from the shackles, he didn't think that he could escape if Niu Yu didn't let him. His whole body trembled and froze on the spot. Don't be nervous. I have something to tell you. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he put away the storage pouch. Guan Zhongkai put on a long face and said, Senior's words are precious. I really don't have any more spirit stones on me. I don't dare to waste any more of your time. The fee for chatting was too high. He really couldn't bear it. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He understood what Guan Zhongkai meant. So it turned out that Guan Zhongkai was afraid that he would extort him again. Slightly embarrassed, he waved his hand and said, I'm not that greedy. This time it's free. Thank you, Senior. Junior is all ears. Guan Zhongkai stood there woodenly with his hands behind his back. Yu Qianqiu smiled and asked, I heard that your master, Sikongju, has already led people to Gold Casting City? Why yes. Guan Zhongkai looked at him in bewilderment. He didn't know what Niu Yu wanted to do. When you go back, you can tell your master, Sikongju, everything that happened here. If he's unhappy, tell him to come and find me. I don't dare. Guan Zhongkai put on a look of fear and trepidation. It'd be a miracle if he didn't dare. I'm afraid that in order to escape punishment, he'll push all the blame onto me. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him but didn't expose him. He continued, Go back and tell your master that I know why he's here. Today there are so many people who came to find me. They're all here for the same reason as your master. Finally getting to the main topic, Guan Zhongkai woke up and hurriedly said, Senior Niu, I'm here on master's orders. Please come to Gold Casting City and meet my master. You're only saying it now? What were you doing before? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, I'm not going. Guan Zhongkai swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He couldn't afford to offend him. He thought to himself, you're the one talking nonsense. You didn't even give me a chance to say it. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, I won't beat around the bush. All the countries want to recruit me, but I'm not related to any of you. Talking about friendship is nonsense. In short, whoever gives me the most money will be able to invite me. As for the World Commerce Association's name, it's still a little small and can't suppress me. Let your master not worry. 10 days later, all the countries will send people to report their base price. I'll go with whoever offers the highest price. All right. I'm still busy here, so I won't keep you. Send the guest off. Please. Fu Chun raised her hand and gestured for him to leave. Guan Zhongkai bade farewell and quickly left. He didn't want to stay here a minute longer. Yu Qianqiu strolled to the door and watched the two of them leave. Inside the courtyard, Merlin could faintly hear Fu Chun say, Mr. Guan, after you go out, you must announce the rules inside to everyone. Otherwise, there will be more misunderstandings. He didn't hear Guan Zhongkai's reply. After Guan Zhongkai came out, the people outside the courtyard were surprised to find that the people who came out before them all had black faces, but this guy's face was pale. Even Qin Jiaxing, who was guarding the door, couldn't help but take a few more glances. The next one can pay and go in. Qin Jiaxing raised his hand and pointed at Yulan Do in front of him. Yulan Do grabbed Guan Zhongkai and asked, Brother Guan, what's wrong? But what happened inside? What happened? He almost lost his life. Guan Zhongkai was scared just thinking about it. His gaze swept across the crowd. There were even some people who had grudges with him. He thought to himself, damn it. If they were to be unlucky, then everyone would be unlucky. Why should they tell them the rules inside? He wasn't wrong to think this way. If there were only a few people who were cheated, then these few people would definitely be unlucky when they returned. But if everyone was cheated, then they could only blame Nyoyud for being too cunning and not everyone else. If a few of them were idiots, then it was understandable. There was no reason to say that everyone was an idiot. In this way the law wouldn't punish everyone. At least everyone would receive a lighter punishment because it had nothing to do with incompetence or incompetence. He wanted to leave, but he hesitated when he saw Yulan Do. After all, their friendship wasn't shallow. Thus, he grabbed him and said, "Come with me, I have something to tell you." He wanted to tell Yulan Do alone. He didn't want others to benefit from it. Qin Jiaxing glanced at them coldly and didn't rush them. He thought about what his boss had said when he was strolling in the plum forest. "I won't play with schemes today. This time I'm playing with people's hearts. I'll openly set up a big formation here. Let's see who can break my formation. This formation doesn't take people's lives. It only discerns people's hearts. Anyone who enters the formation will be able to see through the method to break it. However, those who are selfish, I hope they won't disappoint me." At that time, when Fu Chun saw his bleak and sighing face, she was puzzled and said, "Boss, if we can really earn money you should be happy. From your tone, why do you sound so depressed?" "Earning money is secondary. You won't understand even if I explain." Boss shook his head and sighed. "I've killed many people, many people. Maybe in the future more people will die because of me. I just want to know if what I did was wrong. If people's hearts aren't what they used to be, then it doesn't matter. I know what to do in the future." The two of them looked at each other. They didn't know how many people their boss had killed. Was it a few dozen or a few hundred? However, the two of them could hear that their boss was a little guilty. Fu Chun asked curiously, "Then why do you hope that someone can break your big formation? Won't this make you feel uneasy?" Boss glanced at the two of them and smiled faintly. He didn't explain much and slowly walked into the hall. As he walked, he softly muttered, "Riding a sword to traverse the vast heaven and earth, white bones like a mountain, startling birds. Why do you have to do this?" The two of them didn't understand why their boss suddenly became so sentimental. In short, they were confused and didn't know what he meant. However, at that time, Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun didn't really believe that this method could make money. They estimated that at most 1 or 2 unlucky people would be enough. If this method could make a lot of money, then everyone in the world was an idiot. However, the result made the two of them speechless. They really admired their boss from the bottom of their hearts. It was such a simple setup, but everyone rushed to give money to him. They couldn't even be chased away. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that those people who suffered losses didn't have anyone to threaten them. No matter how many times they urged them to reveal the truth, they wouldn't do it. Although they were all angry, they really kept their mouths shut. They couldn't wait for everyone to suffer losses. The two of them looked on coldly from the side, but they were sighing in their hearts. They finally understood why their boss said this was a big formation. Why he said this formation didn't take people's lives but only discerned their hearts. Sure enough, it was all because of selfishness. This person's selfishness really made people speechless. Yulan Do was holding a storage bag in his hand and was about to hand it over to Qin Jiaxing. After Guan Zhongkai's disturbance, he didn't know whether to leave or stay. He dawdled there and the others couldn't take it anymore. The people behind him shouted, "Yulan Do, are you going in or not? If you want to go in, then be straightforward. If you don't want to go in, then leave. Don't block the way." Yulan Do lightly shook off Guan Zhongkai's hand that was holding him. He pointed behind him unhappily and said, "Brother Guan, you finished your business. You should let me go back as soon as possible." What he meant was that it wasn't easy for so many people to queue up. "If you pull me away now, won't I be at the back of the queue when I return? Aren't you harming me?" Chapter 553. Guan Zhongkai was about to inform Qin Jiaxing through telepathy, but Yulandu's storage bag was already in Qin Jiaxing's hand. Qin Jiaxing, who was guarding the door, glanced at the two and sneered in his heart. He counted the spirit stones in the bag. Guan Zhongkai was speechless. He had done his best and Yulandu wouldn't be able to blame him. He sighed and strode to the side. With a whoosh, he soared into the sky and flew towards Gold Casting City. Yulan Do only turned her head to look at Guan Zhongkai's disappearing figure before she strode into the plum garden. By One Nation's sacred land, heart-cleansing lake. When Lanfeng's voice rang out, everyone turned pale with fright. Even with everyone's cultivation, they were unable to sense where the sound came from. Even the 6 soul formation realm experts in the sky were no exception. Looking around, the verdant forest was shaking non-stop, and the calm surface of the lake had also lost its tranquility. All the soul formation realm experts present could do the same, but for some reason, everyone felt the atmosphere was strangely oppressive. The 6 people who wanted to fight couldn't. Pei Fong and the other 2 looked at each other and relaxed their tense expressions. Yin Baikong, who had been called out, felt a little awkward. He thought to himself, damn my bad luck. I've been yelling for half a day but there's no response. Of all times they just had to target me. Isn't this like slapping my own face? I've never had any conflicts with Wen Lanfeng before. Brother Wen, please don't misunderstand. We didn't mean to cause trouble. Yin Baikong smiled awkwardly and his deep voice spread to the surroundings. He suddenly pointed at Pei Fong and said, it was Fatty Pei and the other 2 who provoked us first. We had no choice but to show some respect. Wen Lanfeng called out his name, but he dragged the others into the conversation. Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu frowned but didn't say anything. Pei Fong, on the other hand, shook his fat face and scolded, Yin Baikong, we all know what kind of person you are. Don't slander us. Damn Fatty, how dare you say you didn't provoke us first? Yin Baikong angrily pointed at the crowd below and said, there are so many pairs of eyes down there as witnesses, yet you still dare to lie through your teeth. Get someone to testify. Pei Fong roared. He didn't believe that with the cultivation of those people below him, there would be anyone who dared to testify in front of him. It would be more likely if they didn't want to live in the future. The 2 of them were at each other's throats. They were both cursing each other for being shameless. They were not afraid of losing the demeanor of the top 10 experts in front of so many people. Many of the people below were disdainful, but it was none of their business. They were all watching the show. I wonder if the 6 of you would still dare to act like this in Bai Changchun's territory? When Lanfeng's voice suddenly sounded in the air. The 6 people facing each other raised their heads and were shocked. None of them had noticed when he had arrived. Clearly, his cultivation was much higher than theirs. In the sky, his grayish-white robe fluttered gently. His figure was tall and slender, and his long, uncrowned hair fluttered in the wind behind his head. He gave off the feeling of blending in with heaven and earth. When Lanfeng crossed his arms and stood quietly in the air, his slightly melancholic eyes stared coldly at the 6 people below. Yin Baikong and Pei Fong, who were chattering like shrews, stopped arguing. Mr. Wen? The hundreds of spirit-severing experts below cupped their fists and called out. When Lanfeng looked down and nodded slightly. When the 6 people heard Wen Lanfeng's words, they didn't know how to answer. They looked at each other and felt that something was wrong. This aggressive way of speaking was not Wen Lanfeng's usual style. Brother Wen. Yin Baikong was the first to cup his fists and said with a smile, we haven't seen each other for 100 years. I didn't expect Brother Wen to still be as elegant as ever. Your cultivation is even better than before. This is truly worthy of celebration. Brother Wen. The other 5 people also cupped their fists and saluted. In the sky above the forest not too far away, Wen Rui revealed a gratified smile when he saw this scene. Who in the world would dare to defy the patriarch except for Bai Changchun? With the patriarch, Bai Wan nation's status in the cultivation world would not decline. You even turned a deaf ear to my words. It seems that I, Wen Lanfeng, have been in seclusion for 100 years and have almost been forgotten. No wonder you have to put the Wen family's sacred land in your eyes and want to fight and kill here. Wen Lanfeng's gaze moved across the faces of the 6 people and said in an indifferent tone, you all came to me together. Do you think I'm easy to bully? The 6 of them sensed that something was wrong from Wen Lanfeng's eyes. There was a faint killing intent in them. They all gasped. Could it be that this guy's temperament changed after being in seclusion? The previous Wen Lanfeng had a gentle temperament and would never be like this. Feeling something was wrong, Yin Baikong, who had been talking to them, shut his mouth. It was not a good thing to stand out at this time. Bing Qingzi, on the other hand, frowned and said, Brother Wen, don't misunderstand. I definitely didn't mean that. When we heard that Brother Wen came out of seclusion, we all came to congratulate you. How would we dare to look down on Brother Wen? Bing Qingzi, you don't need to explain. I heard Yin Baikong's words and the facts are right in front of me. If I didn't show up, I'm afraid the Wen family's sacred land would become your battlefield. Wen Lanfeng snorted coldly and said, this kind of congratulatory method is really unheard of. Since you all have the guts to come here and behave atrociously, you must have come prepared. I Wen will accompany you all. There's no need to waste time. Come at me together. Wen Lanfeng crossed his arms and slowly descended to the center of the 6 people. The 6 people floated backward and made way for him. At this time no one dared to get close to him. This guy had a murderous look in his eyes. It was best not to become the first target of his attack. There was an uproar below. No one expected that when Lan Feng, who was famous for his mild temperament among the top 10 experts, would actually take the initiative to challenge them. Listening to his words, when Lan Feng was prepared to deal with 6 experts at the late soul transformation stage by himself. Many people even guessed that when Lan Feng wanted to use the 6 experts to establish his prestige in front of everyone. Otherwise there was no need. Some people even came to a conclusion. When Lan Feng was so confident that the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun, had already been defeated by him. The disciples of the One family, who were originally shuttling back and forth to entertain the guests, all stopped at this time and looked up at the sky excitedly. Although most of them had never seen the elder ancestor, it did not hinder their worship of him. Now that they had personally witnessed the elder ancestor challenge 6 experts at the late soul transformation stage, they were truly overwhelmed with emotions. Everyone knew that when Lan Feng had overestimated himself and challenged the world's #1 expert for the sake of a woman. When the disciples of the One family went out, they often heard people ridiculing this matter. Although they were angry because the elder ancestor was in seclusion, when Rui had decreed that they were not allowed to easily stir up trouble outside. As a result, most of them swallowed their anger. Now that the elder ancestor had come out of seclusion and publicly challenged the world's 6 experts, they felt like they had been humiliated. Once this news spread, everyone could walk in the cultivation world with their heads held high again. Who would dare to be unconvinced? The One family would definitely regain its position as the #1 family in the cultivation world. The 6 people in the sky were shocked to hear this. This when Lan Feng was so arrogant that he dared to challenge all 6 of them by himself? His confidence was really inflated. If it was 1 against 3 there might be a chance of victory. But to challenge 6 experts at the late soul transformation stage alone, it seemed that even Bai Changchun had not done it before. The 6 people suddenly thought of the same possibility that everyone else had guessed. Maybe Bai Changchun had really been defeated by him. Bing Qingzi narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "Brother Wen, we are indeed here to congratulate you. Isn't it a bit unreasonable for you to treat your guests like this?" When Lan Feng said indifferently, "Bing Qingzi, if someone came to your great snow mountain to make trouble, would you still treat them as guests?" Bing Qingzi opened his mouth but was speechless. If someone came to his great snow mountain to fight, he would definitely take action. He wanted to say this is different, but then again what's the difference? The 6 people were well aware that it was precisely because when Lan Feng was easy to talk to and had a good temper that he would not do anything as long as they did not provoke the One family. That was why they had the courage to fight here. Just as when Lan Feng said if they were in Bai Changchun's territory, they would not even quarrel, let alone fight. At the end of the day, some things also depended on the person. It was just a matter of whether they were afraid or not. Bai Changchun was a notorious fiend. If he was unhappy he would kill someone. In front of him, no one would have the thought of causing trouble. Everyone was obedient and couldn't wait to hide. Who would dare to fight in his territory? After when Lan Feng appeared with a tough attitude that they had never shown before, the 6 people were thinking of retreating. Bai Changchun was scary enough, and they did not know if this guy had really defeated Bai Changchun. But if they retreated like this, the news would immediately spread throughout the cultivation world. The so-called 6 late-stage soul transformation experts had joined forces and yet they did not dare to accept Wen Lanfeng's challenge. If this news spread it would be a joke. They could not afford to lose this face. Brother Wen, I'll first apologize to you. I was hot-headed and did not consider thoroughly. I shouldn't have caused trouble in your Wen family's sacred land. Yin Baikong was really adaptable. He bowed to Wen Lanfeng on the spot. After getting up he sighed and said, Brother Wen, it really is a misunderstanding. We heard that after you came out of seclusion, you went to Demon Ghost region and defeated Bai Changchun, becoming the #1 expert in the cultivation world. We specially came to congratulate you. We had absolutely no intention of not putting you in our eyes. If you don't believe me you can ask everyone else. After saying this, Yin Baikong quickly transmitted his voice to the 5 people. Everyone, didn't you all come here to know the result of the battle in Demon Ghost region? I have already endured the humiliation. You should also cooperate. The people below looked at each other and whispered. The world commerce was worthy of being the largest force in the cultivation world. They actually knew that Wen Lanfeng had already defeated Bai Changchun. After sighing, everyone looked at Wen Lanfeng in awe. The #1 expert in the world. The eyebrows of the other 5 who received Yin Baikong's voice unconsciously twitched as they glanced at Yin Baikong meaningfully. as expected of a famous old fox in the cultivation world. Using the opportunity to test the waters, this plan was very vicious. If Wen Lanfeng had even defeated Bai Changchun, just this news alone would be enough to cause a sensation. The few of them losing face was really insignificant. If Wen Lanfeng had lost to Bai Changchun and heard this, he would definitely not dare to accept the title of #1 expert in the world. Wen Lanfeng, who could not defeat Bai Changchun, was really nothing to be afraid of. With the 6 of them joining forces, he would probably not be able to escape today. Chapter 554. Although the 6 of them were respectful, the exchange of glances showed that they knew each other. If Wen Lanfeng won against Bai Changchun, it would be fine. But if he lost, it would be the day of Wen Lanfeng's death. A great battle was inevitable, and the Wen family would completely disappear from the cultivation world. The 6 of them maintained their previous state, their gazes silently falling on Wen Lanfeng, quietly waiting for his reply. Although Wen Lanfeng had been trapped by love for many years, he had survived until now in the cultivation world and had such a high cultivation base. Naturally, he was not an ordinary person. He keenly sensed that the atmosphere between them had become a little strange. His melancholy eyes became deep in an instant. His cold gaze swept over them and finally fell on Yin Baikong's face, who was smiling apologetically. Yin Baikong's expression did not change. Besides Bai Changchun, who dares to call himself the world's #1 expert? Wen Lanfeng replied indifferently. His robe fluttered slightly in the wind but silently stopped moving. No matter how strong the wind was, it would not be able to move the corner of his robe. The wind suddenly rose, and the surrounding branches swayed unsteadily. The group of people below had been in the cultivation world for many years, so they naturally noticed that the atmosphere in the air was a little strange. The 7 people's robes were as heavy as 1,000 caddies, and the wind did not move them. They were like stone statues floating in the air. No one said a word. They exchanged glances in silence and were also prepared to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Yin Baikong asked in surprise, "Did Brother Wen not fight Bai Changchun? Or did Brother Wen and Bai Changchun fight to a draw? Otherwise, with Bai Changchun's temper, I'm afraid he would not be so easy to talk to. How could he let Brother Wen enter and leave the demon domain at will? Bai Changchun's cultivation base is unfathomable, and he has the ability to shock the world and make the gods weep. There is a world of difference between us. In 3 moves, he broke through my 100 years of cultivation and seriously injured me. Fortunately, Nongzhu arrived in time. Otherwise, I would not be able to stand here and speak with confidence today." Wen Lanfeng slowly told the truth, without the slightest intention of covering up his embarrassment. There was no need to cover up. Even if he cultivated in seclusion for another 100 years, he would not be Bai Changchun's opponent. The disparity was too great. His cultivation was like child's play before Bai Changchun, and it was truly not worth mentioning. In fact, he had vaguely guessed what the 6 of them were planning, but he still told them the truth without fear. Because he had made up his mind to fight with the 6 of them today. Wen Lanfeng also had his own pride. He was convinced that he had lost to Bai Changchun, but he also wanted to prove that he deserved to be ranked 2nd in the world. He wanted to defeat the 6 late Divine Transformation Realm experts to tell her that although Wen Lanfeng was no match for Bai Changchun, she was not a good-for-nothing. In addition, when Rue told him about the bitter history of the Wen clan's descendants over the past 100 years because of his defeat. During the 100 years he was in seclusion, the glory of the #1 clan in the cultivation world had gradually declined. As the pillar of the Wen family, he had the responsibility to restore the family's former glory. At the same time, he needed to fulfill the promise he had made in Obedient Island. If he wanted to support Yu Qianqiu, he would also need to display his strength to intimidate the world. Otherwise, there would always be people who would play tricks on him. For example, the 6 top experts in the cultivation world in front of him. It was precisely because of this that he, who was famous for his good temper in the cultivation world, was no longer docile. He wanted to prove his strength to the entire cultivation world. 3 moves. Everyone gasped. Bai Changchun actually used only 3 moves to defeat Wen Lanfeng? This was too unbelievable. However, no matter how doubtful they were, everyone believed that Wen Lanfeng had no need to belittle himself to elevate Bai Changchun. He, who occasionally appeared in the cultivation world, made people tremble with fear every time he appeared and made the entire cultivation world submit to him. He was dressed in a light green robe and his signature lean face. He was never one to smile. He was cold and indifferent, His eyes were cold and ruthless, and he would kill at the slightest provocation. It was like a shadow shrouding the heads of everyone in the cultivation world. That name was like a monument that people would never be able to surpass. It made people tremble with fear and tremble with fear. Now that they heard the news of Wenlan Feng being defeated in 3 moves, everyone's mood was indescribable. That person was still worthy of the reputation of the #1 expert in the cultivation world. He was indeed an insurmountable existence. The 6 people's faces were dark and gloomy. This news filled their mouths with bitterness. Their mouths were full of saliva and they could not swallow it. They were all experts in the late spirit transforming realm, but the gap was so big. After a moment of absent-mindedness, Yin Baikong swallowed his saliva with difficulty and silently transmitted his voice to the 5 people. He was defeated by Changchun in 3 moves, but he dared to challenge all 6 of us at the same time. He is looking down on us too much. Everyone. Now is the time to let go of our prejudices and work together. If we don't show our sincerity, everyone will have to tuck their tails between their legs in the future. Be that as it may, who lit the fire in the first place? Yin Baikong was adaptable, but it was impossible for him to take the lead. Brother 1. Bing Qingzi was the first to speak after a moment of silence. Everyone's eyes were focused on him, waiting for him to continue. Unexpectedly he said, "Since we are not welcome, we will take our leave. There is no need to make things difficult for everyone." It was not that he did not want to eliminate this troublesome opponent with everyone, but how could Wenlan Feng be so easy to deal with? Even if they won, there would be 1 or 2 unlucky ones among the 6. As for who it would be, it was hard to say. It was not that he was afraid, but he did not want to take this risk at the moment. The demonic book had finally found a suitable successor, and he needed to support him wholeheartedly. If something happened to him with the cultivation of his disciples, they would not be able to help Yan Zhuoxing gain a foothold in the cultivation world. In fact, among the top experts in the cultivation world, apart from Bai Changchun and Wenlan Feng, his cultivation was the highest. But he did not want to be #1 or #2, it was meaningless to him. So what if he was #1? It was impossible to remove the curse on him. In order to complete the mission passed down through the generations, he did not want to have any conflict with either Bai Changchun or Wenlan Feng unless it was absolutely necessary. As soon as these words came out, the other 5 people's expressions changed slightly. They did not expect that the one with the highest cultivation among the 6 would retreat. Unexpectedly, when Lanfeng's words fulfilled the wishes of the 5 people. Bing Qingzi, do you think this is a place where you can come and go as you please? It's not difficult to leave and my request is not too much. Each of you break a finger and I will let the 6 of you go. There was a sudden uproar. When Lanfeng was really arrogant. If this request was not too much, then what was too much? Hu Changshou sneered, Brother Bing, you gave in but they didn't give you face. The other 4 people exchanged a look and their eyes became firm. Bing Qingzi squinted his eyes and said, When Lanfeng, why are you so aggressive? Do you really think the 6 of us are afraid of you? Suddenly, a strong momentum burst out from Wen Lanfeng, sweeping out countless almost tangible wind blades, like a storm, madly rushing toward the 6 people. Wen Lanfeng told the 6 people with practical actions that this battle was inevitable. A broad long sword suddenly appeared in front of Wen Lanfeng. He loosened his arms that were crossed in front of his chest, and the world-famous giant silver sword fell into his hand. At the same time, the 6 of them quickly dodged, and a wall of light appeared in front of them, blocking the wind blades with tinkling sounds. The group of people below quickly scattered in all directions, afraid of being affected. In the sky above the distant forest, when Rui's heart was in his throat. How could he not be worried when the old ancestor was fighting against 6 experts at the late stage of spirit transformation? Man Hu, Yan Zhuoxing, and the others were also rushing in this direction. Suddenly they found a group of people in the sky in front of them with their backs facing them. Their intrusion only attracted a glance from these people. A few crossing calamity stage cultivators were not worthy of their attention. In the sky in front of them, the tyrannical airflow emitted by the 7 people was wantonly rolling. The wind whistled and the strong murderous intent soared into the sky, making it difficult for them to breathe. After seeing the scene of 6 people trapping 1 person, Man Hu was shocked. His master was among them. He couldn't help but salute to the person beside him. Senior Mu, what's going on? The other martial brothers were also shocked. How could this be? Looking at the situation, it seemed that their master was working with the other 5 people to deal with 1 person. Yan Zhuoxing was also shocked. In his knowledge, experts at the late stage of spirit transformation were already very powerful. Even experts at the late stage of spirit transformation had to join forces to deal with someone. The distance was too far, and with his cultivation he couldn't see clearly. So when no one was paying attention to him, his eyes almost narrowed into slits. A faintly discernible red light flickered in his eyes, and he immediately saw the situation clearly. The person being questioned was Mu Sang of the Smokeless Nation. He was here on behalf of Hua Zongming and the others to gather information. When he heard this he sneered, "What's going on? Your master and the other 5 experts at the late stage of spirit transformation want to join forces to fight Wen Lanfeng. What do you think is going on?" It was unknown whether the ridicule in his words was aimed at the side overestimating themselves. Man Hu and his martial brothers were shocked speechless. Under such circumstances, there was no room for them to intervene. It was impossible for them to help their master, so they could only stare and wait for the result. That person was the second strongest expert in the world, Wen Lanfeng. He was actually fighting against 6 experts at the late stage of spirit transformation by himself? Yan Zhuixing slightly clenched his fists. He felt as if the demonic blood in his body had been stimulated by something. In an instant it began to boil, and he had a strong desire to participate in the battle. He desperately suppressed it. He didn't know what was going on. Ever since he started cultivating the demonic book, it seemed as if a seed of battle had been planted in his body, and it gradually sprouted and grew. He asked for it. "Don't be polite with him." Pei Fang roared, and a bewitching blue saber appeared in his hand. There was no need to say anything. At this point, the 6 of them naturally didn't need to be polite. Between them and Wen Lanfeng, it was either you die or I live. Spirit treasure level weapons appeared in their hands, and for a moment, a dense murderous aura formed a faint gray fog among the 7 people. Chapter 555. Monarch Descending Ruler. Blue Beauty Fiend's Saber. Deadly Claws. Cloud Sword. Mysterious Ice Sword. Sword of Wealth. Giant Silver Sword. Enviable names popped out from everyone's mouth, and some even exclaimed, "They're all mid-grade spiritual treasures." TSK. It's rare to see 7 mid-grade spiritual treasures at once. Yan Zhuixing glanced at the crowd and asked Man Hu, "Who are these people?" Man Hu's attention was focused on the 7 experts at the late stage of soul formation. Of course, he was more concerned about his master's safety. He frowned slightly but still explained, "They're not ordinary experts. They're lords of various countries, and all of them are above the soul formation stage. They're the ones who provided support to Everlasting Island." Yan Zhuixing looked to both sides in shock. He didn't expect to see hundreds of soul formation stage experts at once. This was a rare opportunity, so he memorized their faces and continued to ask, "The mid-grade spiritual treasures they mentioned are the weapons of Senior Bing and the others?" "That's right." Man Hu explained, "The golden ruler is Monarch Descending Ruler, and the user is Qi Jiujuan. The blue saber is Blue Beauty Fiend's Saber, and the fat man is Pei Fang. The one with the elbow guard is Ouyangda, and the deadly claws are Deadly Claws. The one on my master's left is Hu Changsho, the palace lord of Sky Peak Cloud Palace in Dongzhen Country, and he's holding the Cloud Sword. The one in the black robe is Yin Baikong of World Chamber of Commerce, and he's holding the Cloud Sword. The one in the middle is Wen Lanfeng, and he's holding the Giant Silver Sword. The 7 of them are among the top 10 experts in the cultivation world, and they're all experts at the late stage of soul formation stage." Yan Zhuixing nodded slightly. Needless to say, Bing Qingzi was holding the mysterious ice sword. He paused for a moment before sending a telepathic message. "Who are the other 3 of the 10 great experts? Why aren't they here?" Man Hu retracted his gaze and looked at Yan Zhuixing. He replied helplessly, "Bai Changchun is the leader of the top 10 experts. There were 2 others who were originally ranked 3rd and 4th. Unfortunately they were killed by Bai Changchun. I don't think they will be able to come." Yan Zhuixing was startled. He glanced at the 7 experts and asked, "What's their cultivation ranking?" "I don't know." Man Hu shook his head. Because of his master, there were some things that he couldn't say. It was really embarrassing to say it out loud. Wen Lanfeng, who ranked 2nd among the top 10 experts, would have been killed by Bai Changchun if Nongzhu had not saved him. Speaking of which, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th ranked cultivators had all fallen at Bai Changchun's hands. In particular, the 3rd and 4th ranked cultivators. None of the Soul Formation final stage cultivators dared to say what their cultivation bases were, and none of them dared to fight for the third and fourth positions. It seemed like Bai Changchun specialized in killing those who stood out. How terrifying. How could he not know? Yan Zhuixing looked at Man Hu doubtfully. Seeing that Man Hu didn't want to say anything, he didn't ask. He cast his gaze on the battlefield, which was about to erupt at any moment. When Lan Feng slowly raised the sword in his hand, the pupils of the 6 people shrank. The weapons in their hands trembled slightly as they raised their vigilance to the highest level. They had hesitated for a long time before. No one dared to make the first move because the first person to make the first move would definitely be the first to suffer when Lanfeng's heavy blow. When Lan Feng glanced at them and transmitted his voice to Wen Rue in the distance, "Activate the defensive formation I've set up in the Holy Palace." Wen Rue didn't dare to hesitate. He knew that the aftermath of the 7 people's fight would be destructive, so he quickly teleported back. After a while, a bowl-shaped arc of light appeared in the distance. It was very conspicuous under the sunlight. The 6 people naturally noticed it too. They knew that it was a sign that when Lan Feng was about to make a move, so they looked at each other. I've long heard that the 1000 search sword skill is unparalleled in the world. It's a pity that I haven't had the chance to experience it. Today I'd like to see how powerful it is. Bing Qingzi finally spoke. He had the highest cultivation base among the 6, so he couldn't wait for others to make the first move. Yin Baikong chuckled and said, "Brother Bing's profound Yin sword skill is not to be trifled with. I'll follow Brother Bing's lead and experience the mysteries of the 1000 search sword skill together." He was encouraging Bing Qingzi to make a move, telling him that as long as he made a move, he wouldn't stay idle. "That's right." Wu Changshu echoed. "Good." Bing Qingzi shouted loudly. A majestic icy aura surged out from his body, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. The cold wind whistled. It was as if it was the coldest winter and only snowflakes were left. Whoosh! A white shadow appeared in front of Wen Lan Feng with a dreamlike trajectory. Bing Qingzi had finally made the first move. When Lanfeng's huge silver sword was placed horizontally in front of him. With a dang sound, the broad blade blocked the incoming sword edge. The scene of one person thrusting his sword forward and the other blocking with his sword horizontally appeared in front of everyone's eyes for a brief moment. Many of the spectators rubbed their hands in excitement. They were finally making a move. Man Hu and his fellow disciples' hearts were in their throats when they saw that their master had made the first move. The moment they clashed, the murderous aura between them exploded. They moved almost at the same time. In an instant their figures filled the sky. The 6 of them made a move at the same time, madly attacking Wen Lan Feng, who was in the middle at an extremely fast speed. The joint attack of the 6 Soul Formation final stage experts was exciting and exciting. The spectators only felt that the originally calm scene in front of them had instantly turned into a violent storm, lightning flashing, and thunder rumbling. The melancholy in Wen Lanfeng's eyes was swept away in an instant, and was replaced by a radiant light. In the blink of an eye, he struck 6 consecutive swords in 6 directions, shattering the 6 people's attacks. Then he teleported into the sky. With the cultivation of the 7 people, fighting at such a close distance from the ground would probably destroy the Wen clan's sacred ground. After a swift and fierce attack failed, a blue phantom reacted the fastest among the 6 people. His figure rapidly rose into the sky with a phantom, and he shouted in the sky, "1000 saber slash." Thousands of demonic and huge blue saber auras suddenly appeared in the sky, impatiently slashing toward Wen Lanfeng's head. The saber shadows that were as dense as a collapsing mountain slashed down crazily with a shocking scene, as if half the sky was filled with the shadows of his saber auras. This person was one of the top 10 experts, Pei Fong, who was known for his speed. As expected, the grand scene of a late-stage soul formation expert's attack was not something ordinary experts could compare to. The spectators sucked in a breath of cold air. Based on Fatty Pei's attack speed and power, who among the spectators would be able to block this move? Everyone was dumbstruck. At this point, the other 5 people naturally had to cooperate with each other. They quickly blocked off Wen Lanfeng's escape routes from the other 5 directions. Ouyangda wore a pair of pitch-black claws that looked like armor. The iron armor started from his elbows and extended to his palms like scales. The sharp claws on his 10 fingers flickered with a sharp black light. Everyone dispersed, but he shot into the sky from below Wen Lanfeng. His sharp claws spread out on his arms, creating an enlarged phantom image. Like a scorpion raising its giant pincers, he spun and strangled with abnormal ferocity. He started attacking from below and Pei Fang started attacking from above. The other 4 people attacked from 4 different directions. They didn't need to rehearse. Based on their countless years of combat experience, they instantly formed the most effective joint attack. Sovereign Descent Ruler. Suddenly, a golden light erupted and expanded 100 times. It swept toward Wen Lanfeng's waist with the roar of thunder, its momentum disdainful. Worthy of the name Sovereign Descent. Cloud-flipping sword. Countless cold lights swept out. Even Hu Changshuo's figure couldn't be found. Like clouds and mist, it rolled toward Wen Lanfeng. The most fatal attack was hidden somewhere. Profound Eye Sword. Specks of starlight fluttered like snowflakes, carrying a dreamy trajectory as they blew toward Wen Lanfeng. The coldness it carried could almost freeze a person to death. Fortune Sword. Densely covering an area, it appeared and disappeared without a trace. Like a venomous snake spitting out its tongue, it seized the opportunity to kill. The 6 people attacked together. Within a radius of nearly 1,000 meters high in the sky, the shadows of the 6 people attacking were instantly everywhere. Floating clouds had long since been shattered by the fierce momentum. Amidst the undulating wind and clouds, it was all the magnificent performance of the 6 people. The people below couldn't even see Wen Lanfeng's shadow. Everyone stared at this scene in shock. All of them secretly wondered who would be able to escape from the joint attack of these 6 people. Even Bai Changchun couldn't be sure. Wen Lanfeng was doomed. Wen Rui's heart was in a mess. If the ancestor lost, the Wen family would be completely finished. Within Yan Zhuixing's narrowed eyes, a red light glimmered. Relying on his cultivation, he couldn't clearly see the fight from so far away, but how could others know of the extraordinariness of his demon eye? In fact, he could see more clearly than the present soul formation experts. Sword without arrows. Wen Lanfeng's explosive shout came from high above. In a flash, a swift and fierce sword aura grew from the 6 people's encirclement. No, it was more appropriate to describe it as exploding. The jagged sword aura was like the radiance of the sun, illuminating all directions and breaking through the dense fog. Bang! Bang! Immediately, an earth-shattering tremor appeared, and a peerless wave of chi pushed out in all directions. High above, the majestic formation of the 6 soul formation experts that enveloped nearly 1,000 meters collapsed in an instant. What replaced it was the sudden appearance of thousands of gigantic sword auras that exploded like porcupines. This scene was like a gigantic lump of crystal with countless edges had suddenly appeared in the air. Each edge was several hundred meters long. It was very spectacular, very valiant, very grand, and very gorgeous counterattack in a desperate situation. Erupting in silence, full of vigor, the attack was effective, breaking the joint attack of the 6 people on the spot. Someone exclaimed, "That's the ultimate move of the Thousand Seeker Sword technique. Sword without arrows. I've long heard of it. I didn't expect to see Wen Lanfeng use it today." TSK. He's strong enough to live up to his reputation as the world's 2nd strongest expert. He's indeed worthy of his reputation. Another person exclaimed. Although the confrontation this time looked gorgeous, it was a real forceful confrontation. There was not the slightest bit of falsehood. The 6 people in the joint attack were forcibly repelled. Each of them had a head-on clash with Wen Lanfeng, and each of them teleported away with a muffled grunt. Pei Fang, who had teleported to the sky, was the first to attack in the encirclement. He didn't know if Wen Lanfeng was deliberately retaliating or if his cultivation was too weak. The powerful impact was unusually violent, causing him to taste sweetness in his throat and almost spit out a mouthful of blood in front of everyone. However, he forcefully swallowed it back and took the opportunity to teleport to wipe the blood seeping out of the corner of his mouth. Chapter 556. Shock. At this moment the 6 of them were extremely shocked. Compared to the spectators below, the 6 of them knew better what had just happened. They finally had the chance to trap an expert like Wen Lanfeng. Naturally they did not want him to escape. Otherwise, it would be very terrifying if he came looking for them one by one for revenge in the future. Therefore, the 6 of them used almost all their strength in the joint attack just now. They wanted to get rid of this worry completely. However, to the 6 of them's disbelief, Wen Lanfeng actually forcefully broke through their all-out attack and broke out of the trap. To the 6 of them, the strength of the 2nd strongest expert in the cultivation world was not just for show. At this point, the 6 of them finally understood the gap between them and Wen Lanfeng. He definitely did not issue the challenge on impulse. but it was indeed due to his strength that he had a card up his sleeve. The 6 of them were well aware of the power produced by the joint attack of 6 late-stage soul formation experts. In short, any one of them would not be able to withstand such a great power. It should be known that the power of the 6 people's joint attack was not as simple as adding their strength together. The power they exerted was equivalent to the power of 8 or 9 late-stage soul formation experts. When Lanfeng's forceful breaking of the joint attack gave the 6 people a shock that outsiders could not understand. The 6 people who were scattered in 6 directions all had unfathomable expressions on their faces. In particular, Yin Baikong's eyes flickered and his heart was filled with regret. He really miscalculated. He did not expect Wen Lanfeng's cultivation to be so high. If he had known earlier, he would not have schemed against him. After the 6 of them witnessed Wen Lanfeng's strength, none of them dared to take the initiative to attack. Fatty Pei, who had suffered some internal injuries, was still full of spirit and courage. At this moment, his eyes were dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking, but he did not dare to be impulsive anymore. Bing Qingzi's sharp eyes stared at Wen Lanfeng. His lips tightened, but his heart was filled with mixed feelings. The reason why he attacked Wen Lanfeng first, other than the disciples watching, was to protect his master's dignity. In his heart, he more or less thought that he was not too far away from Wen Lanfeng. However, the truth proved that the difference was not just a little. Fatty was injured. Yan Zhuixing's demon eye flickered secretly. He clearly saw Pei Fang's action of quietly wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. Not a single expression on the faces of the 6 could escape his observation. Although they could not experience the power of this exchange, they could clearly see that the 6 of them had been frightened by Wen Lanfeng's move. Everyone also sensed that something was amiss from this brief silence. The 6 of them had been attacking together with an indomitable will just moments ago. Why were there no movements now? When Rui finally heaved a sigh of relief. The old ancestor was more powerful than he had imagined. In the air, the crystal spikes that were hundreds of meters long had already disappeared. When Lanfeng stood proudly in the sky with his sword in hand. His long hair fluttered in the wind behind his shoulders. His slender figure stood tall and straight like a god, accepting the admiration of the soul formation stage experts. He looked calm on the surface, but in his heart he was shouting lucky. He was a little too confident in his cultivation after 100 years of seclusion. The combined might of 6 soul formation final stage cultivators was far too powerful. The pressure that they exerted instantly gave people the illusion that they could crush everything. If it was not for the battle with Bai Changchun that allowed him to break through the shackles and reach the realm of being one with the sword as he pleased, he would have been seriously injured even if he did not die. When that huge pressure almost made him immobile with a sword in hand, he was the sword and the sword was the man. The man borrowed the sword's sharpness, and the sword borrowed the man's power. The man and the sword were one, and the sword was unstoppable. His lifelong cultivation glowed with thousands of sword auras, and they exploded against the strong pressure. It was a magnificent and spectacular scene that appeared out of thin air. Although he had broken through the dangerous situation with force, his body was not much better. His qi and blood were surging and it took him a long time to calm down. No matter what, he had still broken through the joint attack of 6 soul formation final stage cultivators. When Lanfeng's confidence soared, the giant silver sword in his hand tilted slightly, and he said proudly in the air, "Everyone, this is just the beginning. Why are you not fighting anymore?" His voice reverberated between heaven and earth, and there was no doubt that the arrogance in his words was unmistakable. The group of people below was amazed. Although he was not a match for Bai Changchun, he was not someone who could be easily defeated by others. Everyone could tell that he despised the 6 soul formation final stage cultivators. If we don't fight now, when will we fight? When Lanfeng turned his head to look at them, and his long hair danced fiercely in the wind behind his shoulders. His eyes fell on Bing Qingzi and he said indifferently, "If you don't fight now, don't blame me for being rude." His words were aggressive, and the prestige of a peerless master fluttered between heaven and earth, which made people feel relaxed and happy. When Rui tightened his lips and his excitement was beyond words. From today onwards, the Wen family would once again stand on the top of all countries. Although the cultivation of Man Hu and his brothers was not as good as the others, they could also see some clues. Their master and the others must have been shocked by the fight just now, and some of them flinched. When Lanfeng's strength made them a little uneasy, and they were worried about their master. Yan Zhuixing's pair of demonic eyes stared at Wen Lanfeng, and he was fascinated, but he was also silent. When Lan Feng by Changchun, wait for me. When I, Yan Zhuixing, succeed in my demonic cultivation, I will definitely compete with you to see who is the peerless master. Bing Qingzi glanced at Yan Zhuixing in the distance, and thought of the mission he shouldered. He really could not afford to gamble, and his renewed fighting spirit was extinguished again. He sighed, Brother Wen, don't push me too far. I admit that your cultivation is higher than mine, and I admit defeat. There was an uproar below. No one expected that the world-famous master of the Great Snow Mountain would admit defeat so easily under the watchful eyes of so many people. The other 5 people in the air were also shocked, and even when Lan Feng was a little surprised. Who would admit defeat when their cultivation reached such a level unless they had no other choice? Man who knew his master the most, heard the helplessness in his master's words. He suddenly turned around, looked at Yan Zhuixing with tears in his eyes, and transmitted a message. Yan Zhuixing, master endured the humiliation for you. Otherwise, with master's noble and virtuous character, he would not have suffered such a great humiliation. The other 3 junior brothers bit their lips and kept silent with pale faces. Yan Zhuixing saw Bing Qingzi's gaze at him before he admitted defeat, and it was full of infinite meaning. Although he did not think that Bing Qingzi could be Wen Lanfeng's opponent, and he did not know why Wen Lanfeng valued him so much, he still appreciated this kindness. He let out a slight sigh and nodded with a dignified expression. Then he transmitted his voice back. Don't worry. Wait until the day I master the demonic arts. I will help Senior Bing get back at Wen Lanfeng 1,000-fold for the humiliation he suffered today. It's good that you understand. Man whose lips trembled and he turned his head. When Lan Feng looked at Bing Qingzi with a somewhat complicated expression, and then said indifferently, Since you have admitted defeat, it's none of your business. Since Bing Qingzi had said such words based on his character, he would not continue to force him. If it was Yu Qianshou, he would definitely think that this old guy must have some ulterior motives for enduring such humiliation. If he did not kill him, he would simply be looking for trouble. Kill. Bing Qingzi cupped his hands towards the other 5, and even more apologetically shook his head towards Yin Baikong and Hu Changchun. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the 5, he gloomily flashed away. In a flash, he appeared between Man Hu and the others. The lords looked at him with some puzzlement. Master. The few junior brothers softly called out. Bing Qingzi calmly waved his hand and said, It's all right. Master's skill is inferior to others, and he brought humiliation upon himself. After giving Yan Zhuixing a meaningful look, he once again looked towards the sky. What about you guys? Wen Lanfeng asked. He slowly turned around in the air with his sword in hand, and stared at Yin Baikong. Yin Baikong's face froze there awkwardly. Don't look at me. What's the point of fighting? Even the 6 of us together are not your match. Now that Bing Qingzi, who is the strongest among us, has left, what the hell? But to make him admit defeat in front of so many people, he really needs to accumulate the courage to do so. In this difficult situation, he cast his gaze towards Pei Fong and said, Fatty Pei, what do you mean by this? Do you still want to fight? I will listen to your opinion. I also think so. Hu Changshou immediately added fuel to the fire without any trace of politeness. Qi Jiujuan and Ouyang De looked at each other. They were on the same side as Pei Fong, so it was impossible for them to say such words in public. However, it was not good for them to express their opinions, so they could only remain silent. The group below looked at each other. The 5 people above had split up and there was going to be a good show to watch. This daddy has had a few hundred of your women. You are clearly trying to trick me. When have you ever listened to my opinion? You even wanted to kill me just now. Pei Fong was so angry that the fat on his face trembled uncontrollably. He glared at Yin Baikong, wanting nothing more than to swallow this old man alive. This old man was too sinister, always scheming against others. When Lan Feng seemed to have just remembered that there was someone standing above him. He coldly snorted and said, I don't like people standing above me and talking. If you don't want to die, then get down here and answer me. Pei Fong's expression was very interesting. He suppressed his anger and helplessly flashed to Qi Jiujuan's side in a huff. The blue-faced bewitching blade that he had used to attack Wen Lanfeng just now was placed behind his back. However, its body was too fat and it looked a little out of place. Wen Lanfeng, we are in the wrong today. I will apologize to you. Where it is possible to let people go, one should forgive them. Pei Fong finally spoke softly, which was equivalent to admitting defeat in disguise. However, he still wanted to save his last bit of face. When Lan Feng glanced at Bing Qingzi, who had already left the arena, He suddenly turned his gaze back and said indifferently, "Just now, everyone joined forces and seemed to want to kill me. Don't you think the saying, where it is possible to let people go, one should forgive them, is ridiculous? Since you have already made a move, either admit defeat and leave, break a finger and leave, or fight me. Fatty Pei, there is no need to say anything else. When Lanfeng, don't go too far." Although Pei Fong was broad-minded and fat, his temper was also famous in the cultivation world. As soon as he finished speaking, Wen Lanfeng suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, there were already countless Wen Lanfeng in the air. Chapter 557. After a quick count, there were about 100 of them. The entire area instantly became deathly silent, and no one could feel the flow of air. 100 giant silver swords, 100 Wen Lanfeng, all stared at Pei Fong. The atmosphere in the air suddenly became tense. Anyone could see that Wen Lanfeng was about to take the initiative to attack. "They're not phantoms." Someone below exclaimed, "It's the Qi manipulation form." Wen Lanfeng's cultivation has actually reached the realm of Qi manipulation form. This is a legendary immortal technique. Yan Zhuixing's demon eye flickered and found that the 100 Wen Lanfengs were not phantoms. But if they were real, they did not seem to be real. He turned around and asked, "Senior Bing, what's the Qi manipulation form?" Bing Qingzi squinted his eyes and stared at the sky, shaking his head. "It's not the Qi manipulation form. It's the Thousand Search Sword Skills extraordinary sword-splitting art. It's said that when practiced to a high level, one can split into thousands of clones to attack at the same time. That's how the name Thousand Search Sword Skill came about. It seems that Wen Lanfeng has not reached that level yet." Yan Zhuixing replied with an "oh," and those around him who did not understand were enlightened. Looking at the sky again, they found it funny. What a bad karma. Previously, there were 6 people surrounding Wen Lanfeng, but in the blink of an eye, there were 100 Wen Lanfengs surrounding him. "Fatty Pei, make up your mind. I can't wait for too long." This was a threat. The 100 Wen Lanfengs spoke at the same time, and their voices reverberated in the air as if there were 100 people speaking at the same time. Wen Lanfeng was still Wen Lanfeng. No matter how ruthless he was, he could not be so ruthless. If it was Yu Qianshou, it would be good if he did not sneak attack. He would definitely not do it in such a dignified manner. He would kill those who deserved to be killed. Wen Lanfeng, don't go too far. Pei Fong held the blue-faced bewitching blade in his hand. Looking around, he found that he had been locked by Wen Lanfeng's aura. He wanted to escape. Although his ability to escape was rare, he did not know if he could escape from Wen Lanfeng's hands. After all, the difference in cultivation was too big. Yin Baikong and Hu Changshou exchanged glances. They were somewhat pleased with themselves as they waited to see Pei Fong make a fool of himself. Qi Jujuan was the one who felt the most helpless. Fatty Pei could have stood anywhere, but he just had to stand next to him. Now he was also surrounded by 100 Wen Lanfengs. To help or not to help, it was really a headache. Pei Fong's voice had just fallen when one of the 100 Wen Lanfengs transformed into a white shadow. A cold light flashed like rolling thunder, like a flying immortal from beyond the heavens, and he finally made his move. A simple attack that abandoned all extravagance was unleashed. Everyone's eyes were unblinking. Qi Jujuan did not have much time to think and subconsciously teleported to Ouyangda's side. Pei Fong wasn't someone to be trifled with. After all, he was a late-stage soul formation cultivator. The blue-faced demon saber in his hand glowed with a demonic blue light. It suddenly expanded, forming a saber aura that was more than 10 meters long. Dang! The sound reverberated through the heavens and earth. One blue and one white collided, stirring up an uproar. The white shadow disappeared. Pei Fong calmed down after this exchange. Although his arms were numb from the impact and the blood in his body was tumbling, he realized that the other party was only SOSO. It wasn't that he couldn't withstand it. As long as he could withstand it for a while, the others would naturally know what to do if they still cared about their reputation. However, it was too early for him to be happy. When Lanfeng could control more than one avatar at a time. Swoosh. One avatar moved, followed by a second, a third, a fourth. After Pei Fong dealt with a few, not only did his arms become numb from the impact, but his scalp also felt numb. His heart turned cold. This was because he realized that when one avatar was defeated, another would immediately appear. There were always more than 100 avatars. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to withstand them for long with his cultivation. The frequency of Wen Lanfeng's avatars attacking became faster and faster. forcing Pei Fong to use a life-saving move that consumed a lot of his cultivation. He shouted, "Show off my blue face." Pei Fong instantly turned into a blue fat top in the air. A fat top with many blue wings. He spun in the air in a dazzling blue light. It was very beautiful, desperately dealing with the attacks that came like a storm. Bang bang bang. The rapid sound of explosions rang in the air. It was simply deafening. When Lanfeng's hundreds of doppelgangers wielded a huge silver sword, bringing out streaks of silver lightning. Just like the battle with Bai Changchun at the 1,000-mile lake, they transformed into a huge, gorgeous white lotus flower in full bloom. In the eyes of everyone in the air, a huge white lotus in full bloom was beating a fat top with blue wings. It looked beautiful, but everyone understood that it was definitely not just beautiful. The power contained in it was terrifying, and they could feel it from the surging aftershocks of the battle. Everyone could act as if it was none of their business and just watch the show. They didn't know that Pei Fong was already suffering in the battle. In the high-speed rotation, the blue demon saber was constantly switched between his left and right hands. When Lanfeng's cultivation was much higher than his. Such a dense frequency of attacks shook his arm until it was numb, and the saber almost fell out of his hand. He simply couldn't hold the saber with one hand, and could only keep switching between both hands. Pei Fong, who was clenching his teeth and resisting, didn't even realize how ugly his face was. His chubby and rosy face was now as white as a sheet of paper, deathly pale. It was only when blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth and his nose that he felt something was wrong and panicked. At this point, it was impossible to find a short gap to escape. When Lanfeng's attacks were frighteningly dense, and he didn't even have the slightest chance to escape. He also had to desperately protect his body, not daring to show any flaws. Otherwise, under such dense attacks, a small flaw could take his life. After Yan Zhuixing's demonic eyes flashed, he sighed with lingering fear and said, "Senior Bing, Pei Fong's 7 orifices are bleeding. He's already injured and I'm afraid he can't hold on any longer." Man Hu and the others turned around. With their cultivation, they couldn't even see the faces of people at such a distance, let alone such a high tempo and intense battle. Some people around looked at Yan Zhuixing with disdain. The meaning in their eyes was clearly saying, "We can't even see clearly, and you, a puny early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator, dare to boast shamelessly." Yan Zhuixing was slightly startled, and he knew that he had forgotten himself. Bing Qingzi, however, was a sensible person. He looked at Yan Zhuixing with some gratification and transmitted a message, "Your demonic eyes have begun to develop?" Yan Zhuixing smiled faintly and transmitted a message back. "I'm still far from mastery, just a small mastery. However, these messy appearances can't confuse my demonic eyes. Under my demonic eyes, everything is revealed and there's nowhere to hide." Good. Bing Qingzi uttered a word in satisfaction. He didn't say anything else and continued to watch the battle with a smile on his face. "Qijujuan, oh Yangda, what are you waiting for? Are you going to watch me die?" Pei Fong's cry for help came from the loud explosions and he seemed to be crying. It was very urgent. With such a powerful and intensive attack, the people below felt their blood run cold. Hearing that an expert at the late stage of soul formation was beaten to tears, one could imagine the pressure Fatty Pei was under. Fortunately, he was an expert at the late stage of soul formation. If it was someone weaker, he would probably die under such attacks. Qi Jiujuan and O Yangda, who heard the cry for help, looked at each other and were secretly communicating with each other. Suddenly, when Lanfeng's cold snort sounded around them, as if it was directed at the two of them. The two of them glanced around alertly and their pupils shrank. They saw about 200 Wen Lanfengs around them, staring at them coldly. The two of them were speechless. They didn't expect that Wen Lanfeng could create another 200 doppelgangers to deal with them while fighting one at a time. It was a matter of life and death. They wanted to help, but they were afraid of following in Pei Fong's footsteps. They were vigilant but didn't dare to move. The people below were in an uproar again. It seemed that Wen Lanfeng was dealing with Pei Fong with ease and didn't use his full strength at all. If so many doppelgangers attacked at the same time, Fatty Pei would probably be finished. Pei Fong naturally discovered it as well. However, his life was at stake, so it was naturally more important to protect himself. He shouted again, "Yin Baikong Hu Changsho, quickly come and help me. My blue palace has 2 blue demon beast eggs. I'm willing to give them to you for free after this." Yin Baikong and Hu Changsho's eyes suddenly lit up when they heard this. The crowd was even more shocked. Everyone knew that blue demon beasts were not ordinary demon beasts. They were rare spirit beasts in the cultivation world with extraordinary power and could be considered priceless treasures. Fatty Pei's blue palace had one, and it was the treasure of the palace. No one expected it to lay eggs. Yin Baikong transmitted his voice to Hu Changshu. An adult blue demon beast is more powerful than an early spirit-severing realm expert. This damn fatty is really cunning. The blue demon beast laid eggs, but he didn't even leak a word about it. Hu Changshu glanced at him. You're even more sinister than him. Who knows what you're doing behind the scenes? Huyin said, what do you mean? You want to bet? Halfway through the transmission the two of them jumped in fright at the same time. It was because 200 Wen Lanfangs had appeared around the two of them, glaring at them like tigers watching their prey, ready to attack at any time. The two of them immediately became vigilant. Spirit beasts were good but not as important as their lives. Without their lives, what use would a spirit beast have? Wen Lanfeng's 200 doppelgangers were truly frightening. His cultivation was a bit unfathomable. Brother Wen, everyone knows we're enemies with this damn fatty. Yin Baikong laughed awkwardly. What he meant was, don't listen to this damn fatty's nonsense. We won't help him, don't misunderstand. The crowd watched Wen Lanfeng fight a late-stage soul formation expert and intimidate 4 in a row. They were speechless. They really didn't know how many more doppelgangers he could create. Pei Fong almost vomited blood from Yin Baikong's words. He was already on the verge of collapse, and now that he was distracted, his weakness was immediately revealed. Not good, but it was already too late. A sharp pain came from his hand, and the blue demon saber had already left his hand. A flurry of footsteps came from all directions, whipping at his body. Chapter 558. Outside the fog forest, Nongzhu was wandering around. According to reliable sources, Yu Qianshou was hiding inside, so Nongzhu tried his best to find him, but to no avail. After wandering around for a few days, Nongzhu felt that something was wrong. According to her understanding of Yu Qianshou, that guy was a restless person. Why would he stay inside? Coincidentally, she received news that a guy called Niu Yid had cheated a lot of spirit stones from later Zhou. Nongzhu's first reaction was that this Niu Yid might be Yu Qianshou. However, when she heard that this Niu Yid was a soul formation expert, Nongzhu denied her previous guess. Yu Qianshou could change his appearance, but his cultivation couldn't be faked. However, Nongzhu was very curious about who this Niu Yid was. Even with her vast knowledge in the cultivation world, she had never heard of this person. Out of curiosity, she decided to go to Ghost Manor to take a look. Others might be afraid of the one-armed old man, but he didn't care. Before she left, she suddenly heard another shocking news. In the sacred land of Baiwan, when Lanfeng defeated 6 late-stage soul formation experts, Pei Fong was seriously injured, and one of his palms was cut off by Wen Lanfeng's sword. There were also 5 experts who admitted defeat to Wen Lanfeng. The most baffling thing was that Wen Lanfeng had said that he admired Yu Qianshou very much after hearing that he was overflowing with talent. He also warned the soul formation experts who were preparing to deal with Yu Qianshou that he wouldn't sit idly by. In the southeast of the fog forest, several cultivators were preparing all kinds of food and flattering Nongzhu in a large pile of rocks. There were also a few who were telling Nongzhu the latest news. Holding a roasted muntjac leg, Nongzhu squatted on the big rock and stared at the people who were looking at her in shock. Is this news true? Are you sure? Senior Nongzhu, we would never dare to lie to you. One of them patted his chest and guaranteed, this news is absolutely true. Right now, this matter has already spread like wildfire. There's no way it's fake. Eat and drink well. I'll go ask Wen Lanfeng. Nongzhu threw the roasted muntjac leg into the man's arms and disappeared into thin air. The man hugged the oily roasted muntjac leg and looked at the others. In the plum garden of the Ghost Manor, Yu Qianshou, who had extorted all the countries, used his free time to practice the animal show in the garden. This was something that he would practice whenever he was free. He had always been very confident in the things that Bai Changchun came up with, so he would practice hard whenever he was free. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing didn't understand what their boss was doing, but it didn't matter whether they understood or not. The task that Yu Qianshou gave them was to inquire about the news of the cultivation world every day. The two of them were happy to be the best among the wandering cultivators. When Yu Qianshou heard the news that Wen Lanfeng defeated 6 cultivators at the late soul formation stage, he was really amazed. It would be a lie to say that he was not envious. However, he was still quite disdainful of the fact that Wen Lanfeng beat Pei Fong seriously but didn't kill him. It was obvious that he had already offended Pei Fong, but he still left a source of trouble. Would Wen Lanfeng say that he was good? When he heard Wen Lanfeng say that he would support him, Yu Qianqiu was completely speechless. He wandered around the plum garden with his hands behind his back, looking at the sky and then the ground. In short, he was full of questions. What could he do? There were old branches in the plum garden, but there were no plums to compete with. Yu Qianqiu wandered around the bare plum forest for a long time, but he really couldn't figure out why. Although he had long heard of Wen Lanfeng, the love addict, he had never seen him before. He didn't even know how tall, short, fat, or thin he was. After thinking about it, he could only think of one possibility. He knew that Wen Lanfeng went to the demon domain to challenge his master. If an expert like Wen Lanfeng came out to support him, it must be related to the demon domain. Old Bai didn't seem like someone who would ask for help. Could it be related to Nongzhu? Yu Qianqiu snapped a plum branch absent-mindedly. He guessed that it was possible, but he couldn't be sure. Who cares? I can't be bothered to think about it. It's not a bad thing anyway. Yu Qianqiu muttered and threw away the plum branch in his hand. He waved his hand to summon his two subordinates who were reporting the news and asked, "Are you ready for tomorrow?" The two replied, "Everything is ready." Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction. Fu Chun asked hesitantly, "Boss, are we really going to go with whoever gives us the most money?" "Of course." Yu Qianqiu wandered away with his hands behind his back. The two who were left behind looked at each other in confusion. Ghost Manor welcomed the same liveliness it had 10 days ago. Inexperienced loose cultivators crowded around the manor. There seemed to be even more people than the last time. There was no other reason than the arrival of a large group of experts. However, this time the experts didn't seem to be in a good mood. They had to suffer in silence. As long as the people involved knew what was going on, they wouldn't let the surrounding loose cultivators know. However, the loose cultivators weren't fools. They could guess what was going on even if they didn't say it out loud. These people had been cheated of so much money. They would probably be punished by their sect elders when they got back. However, Nyoye didn't go too far this time. He didn't ask them to pay for the queue. After Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing took the jade archives from the crowd, they said, "Please wait a moment." Then they entered the plum garden together. Most of the crowd waited silently for the final result, then prepared to rush back to report. Among the crowd, Yulan looked around looking for Guan Zhangkai. After suffering a loss, he finally understood that Guan Zhangkai was trying to warn him, but he didn't appreciate it and fell for it. Now that he thought about it, he felt sorry for himself and his old friend's good intentions. To his disappointment, he didn't see Guan Zhangkai. Instead, he saw Guan Zhangkai's junior brother, Niesheng. Yulan squeezed through the crowd curiously and came to Niesheng's side. He asked, "Brother Nye, why isn't your senior brother Guan Zhangkai here?" Niesheng glanced at him and knew that he was his eldest senior brother's old friend. He expressionlessly replied, "Master has other matters for senior brother to attend to. He left this to me." Seeing his indifferent expression, Yulan softly said, "Oh." Then he didn't say anything else. One mustn't wash one's dirty linen in public. In fact, there were some things that Niesheng couldn't tell him. 10 days ago, when Guan Zhangkai returned, he nervously told Sikongju about how he had been cheated. As a result, Sikongju flew into a rage. To Sikongju and the World Commerce Association, 100 million spirit stones wasn't a big deal. However, this eldest senior brother had embarrassed him time and time again. It was inexcusable to cover up for him. He wouldn't be able to explain himself to his superiors and subordinates. Even if he wanted to protect his own, he couldn't be too protective. Thus, he sealed Guan Zhangkai's dantian on the spot, stripped him of all his rights in the World Commerce Association, and locked him up. As for the rights that originally belonged to Guan Zhangkai, they were handed over to his second disciple, Niesheng. At this moment, Guan Zhangkai was locked up in the cold, pitch-black prison of the World Commerce Association, sighing. He couldn't figure it out himself. He didn't know what kind of bad luck he'd run into recently. How could he be so unlucky? In the plum garden of Ghost Manor, Yu Qianqiu and two of his subordinates were looking through a large pile of jade archives on a table. "Boss, other than the price quoted, there are also some touching words added," Qin Jiaxing said cheerfully. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, a bunch of insensitive people trying to stir up emotions. Only looking at the price. Damn it. They have the nerve to ask for 100 million. He casually tossed the jade archive in his hand onto the floor, shattering it into pieces with a crack. Qin Jiaxing chuckled and loosened his grip. Another crisp crack rang out. On the other side, Fu Chun frowned as she held a jade archive in her hand. Boss, there are some words added in here as well. However, they aren't touching words but more like threats and intimidation. Crazy? Wait, don't smash it. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the jade archives in his hand and said to the two of them, leave behind all of them that carry a threatening or intimidating tone. This is evidence of their crimes. When I have the chance, I'll settle the score with them. How dare they threaten and intimidate me? The three of them carefully selected for almost half a day before they finally picked out the 10 jade archives that offered the highest price. Without exception, these 10 jade archives were backed by one of the top nations in the cultivation world. The lowest price was also 300 million high-grade spirit stones. The one who offered the highest price did not surprise Yu Qianqiu. As expected, it was the wealthiest and most influential World Commerce Association in the world. TSK. Look at their imposing manner. This is what you call an exorbitant demand. Cut to the chase. A fixed price of 1 billion. How refreshing. Ah. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed into slits as he laughed. Qin Jiaxing exclaimed, the World Commerce Association's wealth is indeed frightening. Compared to the second highest bidder who offered 600 million, it's a whopping 400 million. Fu Chun shook her head and said, they're determined to get it. Yu Qianqiu handed the jade archive to Fu Chun and said, go and announce the highest price that the World Commerce Association has offered, lest people say that I'm being unfair. Also, invite the people from the World Commerce Association in and we'll discuss when to pay. The group of people outside the door was already in a bad mood. Now that they had to wait for almost half a day, none of them had a pleasant expression on their faces. Most importantly, many of them did not hold out much hope for this segment of the bidding. If the price wasn't high, it would be a miracle if they relied on the emotional and intimidating words in the jade archives. The higher-ups had never seen Yo Yid in person, so they had no idea what kind of person he was. The moment Fu Chun appeared at the main entrance, she attracted everyone's attention. He didn't beat around the bush and raised the jade archive, saying, the highest bidder, the World Commerce Association, 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. 1 billion? There was an uproar outside. This price was indeed a little too high. Immediately there was a flurry of discussion. I'm afraid that only the World Commerce Association would dare to offer such a price. The World Commerce Association is indeed the World Commerce Association. They're extraordinarily rich. The crowd's gazes landed on the silent Nie Sheng. The latter's face was taut, and there was no sign of joy or pride after winning the bidding. Fu Chun ignored the crowd's discussion. She swept her gaze around and did not see Guanzhongkai of the World Commerce Association. She then raised the jade archive in her hand and said in a loud voice, Senior Nyo wishes to invite an esteemed guest from the World Commerce Association into the Plum Gardens for a meeting. May I know who it is? Nie Xing walked out. Fu Chun was slightly taken aback. She then raised her hand and said, please come in. Chapter 559. He politely led Nie Xing in, looking back every few steps, afraid that this esteemed guest would bump into something or step on a pebble and fall. Such a careful attitude made Nie Xing feel uncomfortable all over, and he almost got goosebumps all over his body. They followed the stone path, passed through the plum forest, then climbed the steps and entered the main hall. A middle-aged man was sitting in the middle of the main hall with his legs crossed, sipping on a cup of tea. Only that Nyo Yid could sit so casually in such a high position. Nie Xing naturally wouldn't look down on him just because he looked young. The cultivation world never judged one's age based on one's appearance. Besides, he had heard Guanzhongkai mention that this person's cultivation was frighteningly high. Just the terrifying aura he emitted could suppress Guanzhongkai to the point where he couldn't move. Before he came, Master Sikongju had repeatedly told him that if the other party's words offended him, he had to be patient and bring him to world commerce first. World commerce, Nie Xing greets Senior Nyo. Nie Xing bowed respectfully. Ichem? Nie Xing? Yu Qianqiu raised his head in slight surprise and sized him up. What are you doing here? Where's Guanzhongkai? Nie Xing was stunned by his question, then avoided the first question and answered, my senior brother was sent by my master to do something else. Yu Qianqiu also realized that his way of asking was problematic and laughed. It's the same, it doesn't matter who comes. He put down the teacup and stood up. You're Guanzhongkai's junior brother? TSK. Looks like you're much more polite than your senior brother. That senior brother of yours. He's quite daring, actually daring to hit my people in front of me. I had to punish him. Nie Xing frowned and gave a perfunctory yes. When Guan Zhangkai went back, he really didn't mention anything about beating people up. He just kept talking about how arrogant Nyoyid was. So there was actually such an inside story. No wonder Nyoyid took away all the spirit stones in his bag. Was Guan Zhangkai taught a lesson by your master when he got back? Yu Qianzhou suddenly asked. No, my master felt that senior brother didn't do his job well and made senior unhappy, so he sent someone else. Nie Xing flatly denied. Ah, that's good. Yu Qianzhou smiled meaningfully. Then, his expression turned serious and he said in a serious tone, let's get back to business. When are you going to give me the 1 billion upper spiritual stones? Nie Xing was startled. 1 billion high-grade spirit stones is not a small amount, no one carries it with them all the time. Naturally, we have to wait until senior gets to World Commerce Headquarters to give. Headquarters? Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, you mean we have to go to Cornucopia? Yes. Nie Xing nodded and said, 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. Apart from the headquarters, the other branches are unable to gather such a large amount of spirit stones. In other words, if I don't go to the headquarters of the World Chamber of Commerce, I won't be able to get this money? Yu Qianzhou said mockingly, if I go and you don't give it to me, will I be unable to do anything to you? World I brother Yu Xing Xing, worse I Yu Xing Xing you. Nie Xing's expression did not change as he replied respectfully, senior is too serious. Since senior is going to head to the headquarters after taking the money, why don't you go directly to the headquarters to get the money? That way we won't have to trouble ourselves. What's more, senior will be a member of the World Chamber of Commerce in the future. How can you say that you can't leave? Unless senior doesn't want to stay in world commerce. If that's the case, please speak frankly. We won't disturb you anymore. Yu Qianzhou was stunned by his words. He looked at Nie Xing again and realized that this guy was much stronger than his senior brother. You're right. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, it shouldn't be a problem for this gold casting city branch to mobilize 1 or 200 million superior grade spirit stones, right? Nie Xing's eyes flashed. He didn't understand what he meant. He said, give me some time. If there are no accidents, there shouldn't be a problem. He left a way out in his words and didn't give a definite answer. Deposit. I want 200 million superior grade spirit stones as a deposit, in case you go back on your word and I don't get a single spirit stone, Yu Qianzhou said bluntly. Once I get the deposit, I'll immediately depart for the World Chamber of Commerce's headquarters. This. Nie Xing said, I can't make the decision on this. I'll have to report this to my master. I'll give you 1 day. If you're late, I won't wait. I'll find someone else to work with. Yu Qianzhou said indifferently, see the guest out. Fu Chun walked over and raised her hand, please. Nie Xing didn't waste time. He cupped his hands and said, goodbye. He then turned and strode away. After the two of them walked far away, Yu Qianzhou slowly walked out of the hall. He went down the steps and wandered around in the plum forest with his hands behind his back. He looked like he was looking for ants. When Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing returned, they saw that he was thinking about something. They didn't disturb him and quietly left. As he swayed back and forth, the laughter from outside suddenly disappeared. Yu Qianzhou looked up and was instantly stunned. He didn't know what was going on. He actually walked out of the plum garden. Maybe he was too engrossed in his thoughts. The wandering cultivators around him looked at him with awe. Yu Qianzhou smiled and turned to walk back. As he turned, he suddenly saw a familiar face of a wandering cultivator in the corner. He couldn't help but be startled. That wandering cultivator saw him staring at him and bowed respectfully. Senior Nyo. Have we met somewhere before? Yu Qianzhou asked. When the wandering cultivator heard this, his gaze was a little evasive. He immediately regained his composure and said, I met Senior a few times at Ghost Manor. I didn't expect Senior to remember me. What's your name? Yi City. Yu Qianzhou responded and looked him up and down. He realized that this wandering cultivator's cultivation level was only in the early core formation realm. He didn't say anything and returned to the plum garden. After walking a few rounds in the depths of the plum forest, he gradually remembered where he met this wandering cultivator. When he brought Zi to supporting Immortal Island, he coincidentally met a group of fans who admired him in Myriad Fragrance Garden. At that time he even went up to them and chatted for a while. He even gave them spirit stones and storage bags. This wandering cultivator just now was the one who stood in front of him and talked to him at that time. My memory isn't bad, so it should be right. Strange. Why would a disciple of supporting Immortal Island come here? Yu Qianqiu frowned and muttered. He narrowed his eyes and decided to investigate. Later, Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing returned. Yu Qianqiu immediately ordered them to secretly investigate this wandering cultivator called Yi City, and not let others find out. In fact, Yu Qianqiu didn't know that the Chinese cultivation world and the Yen father and son who were supported by the various countries had been in a stalemate for a long time. They more or less felt that something was wrong. The enemy seemed to be delaying and had no intention of fighting with them. It seemed like they were waiting for something. Therefore, the upper echelons of the sects that had participated in the trials in the demon realm and the devil Dao secretly made an exception. In the end, they unanimously made a decision. The 6 sects each sent 10 disciples who had never shown their faces in the cultivation world. After swearing a heavy oath, they secretly snuck out of the Chinese cultivation world and went to the various countries to gather information. This was the first time in the Chinese cultivation world that they had done this. The reason was that they were afraid that they would be at a disadvantage without knowing it. The 6 sects sent 60 disciples with mediocre cultivation levels. Just like that, they were scattered to various countries with heavy responsibilities to carry out their missions. It couldn't be helped. Those with high cultivation levels and a bit of status in the sects were not so easy to order around. Who would be willing to take this risk? Almost all of the 60 disciples who snuck in chose to be wandering cultivators in foreign countries because they didn't have the qualifications to join a sect. However, in a situation where they were unfamiliar with the people and the status of the wandering cultivators here was not as good as that of the Chinese cultivation world. In the end, more than half of the 60 people were lost in various conflicts. Only the fittest survived. In the end, there were less than 20 people who stubbornly carried out their missions. When these people officially came into contact with this world, they were shocked. They found that not only were there many experts here, but there were also the legendary soul formation stage experts. Moreover, there were more than 1 or 2 of them. Almost every country had one. The 6 great sects were shocked when such an important piece of news was relayed back. This matter was of great importance. The 6 sects announced this news in the Cultivation Alliance. Immediately, it caused an uproar in the Cultivation Alliance. This time, the various sects couldn't sit still. In order to verify whether the 6 sects were telling the truth or not, the sects sent out unprecedented spies to sneak into the various countries. In fact, this was what should be done in a state of war. If others knew everything about you but you knew nothing about them, how could you fight the war? In fact, it was far easier for China to inquire about the news of the various countries than for the other countries to inquire about China. This was because China's tradition of xenophobia and seclusion had both advantages and disadvantages. If other countries sent people to sneak into China, they would be easily discovered. Then they would be hunted down and expelled. It was very difficult for people with unknown origins to gain a foothold. Therefore, for the first time, all kinds of news about the various countries were continuously transmitted back to the Chinese cultivation world. What made the sects sigh was that Yu Qianqiu, who was forced to leave the Cultivation Alliance, thought he was hiding somewhere. Who knew that it was really as he said when he left the Cultivation Alliance? The Cultivation Alliance has a lot of misunderstandings about me. If that's the case, why should I stay and be hated by others? It's good to leave. The world is big, but there will always be a place for me, Yu Qianqiu. Whether I'm in the Cultivation Alliance or not, I will secretly support the Chinese cultivation world. My sincerity can be witnessed by the sun and the moon. Many people could still vaguely remember what Yu Qianqiu said when he left the Cultivation Alliance. Now that they thought about it, how desperate and sad he must have been at that time. But even so, he was still fighting for the Chinese cultivation world, wandering alone in a foreign country, fighting alone. What a good young man. What an outstanding young man. He could be called a national hero. He was wholeheartedly for his country, but was forced into a corner by the people of his own country. Yet, he resolutely embarked on another journey without regret and continued to fight for the Chinese cultivation world. Thousands of ferocious foreign cultivators had encircled and intercepted Yu Qianqiu, but they had been completely defeated by him. When they recalled his words, "My heart is pure and sincere, and the sun and moon can bear witness," many of them burst into tears. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.